I slapped my last 10 yuan bill on the table, and my hand was shaking. Not because I felt bad about the money, because I needed more. The itch was crawling under my skin like ants. The mahjong tiles clattered as Wang Laosan shuffled them, his nicotine-stained fingers digging through the pile. His eyes kept drifting down to my collar, but I didn't care about that. I cared about one thing. If I lost this round, I'd be completely broke. Hongxia, still playing? Li the cripple grinned with his rotten teeth. You've already lost over 200. Playing, I said, crushing my cigarette on the table edge. Put it on my tab. All three men looked up at me. I knew that look. I'd seen it 100 times. Wang Laosan stacked his tiles slowly. Tab's fine. But what are you putting up as collateral? I didn't answer, just tapped the table to hurry him along. I was wearing a floral blouse with a loose collar, the one my husband Liu Pingkui sent from the city last year. 38 years old, and in this village they'd call me past my prime. But my face still turned heads. Fair skin, a pair of eyes that seemed to hook into anyone who looked at them. The men around here were weak for that. We played 3 more rounds. My luck didn't change. Zhao Dabiao self-drew a winning hand and pushed his tiles forward with a grin.
1. Pure flush, triple multiplier.
Sister Hongxia, you owe another 86. I threw my remaining tiles into the pile and leaned back. The chair groaned under me. How much total? For 130. Wang Laosan calculated faster than anyone. If you don't settle today, interest starts piling up. The room went quiet. The dim yellow bulb lit up 4 faces, 3 men wearing the same patient, knowing expression. I pulled out a cigarette, lit it, and inhaled deep. Smoke poured from my nose and blurred my face. I knew exactly where I stood. 430 yuan. That was real money in a village where most people didn't even make 50 a day. Liu Pingkui sent back 1,800 last month, and I'd gambled away most of it in days. What was left was hidden under my pillow, for fertilizer and rice. I couldn't touch that, but my whole body itched. Every person who loses wants to win it back. And I'm not the kind of woman who accepts defeat. Wang Laosan, I said, cigarette between my fingers, eyes sliding toward him. Your wife's not home tonight, is she? His eyes lit up. Li the cripple and Zhao Dabiao exchanged a glance. One smirked, the other grinned. This wasn't the first time. Last month I lost 300 to Wang Laosan. I went to his place at midnight, and the next day my debt was cleared. The month before that it was Li the cripple.
Before that, Zhao Dabiao.
Sometimes 2 of them at once. The village wasn't blind. People talked behind my back. Some called me a public bus. Others called me a living goddess, meaning anyone could come worship. I didn't care. Or maybe I'd just gotten used to plugging holes this way. Farming? Too exhausting. Growing vegetables? Too hard. Cooking and washing and serving a man? I did that the first 2 years after I married in. Then I discovered I had a skill that paid faster than any of it. I just never admitted it was a skill. Coming to my place works. Wang Laosan stood up, his belt sliding down. But tonight, for 130 won't, by just 1 round. My eyelid twitched. What do you want? Last time you owed me 300 and only gave me 1 go. This time it's 430, that's at least 2 rounds. He counted on his fingers. How about this? 200 per round, you give me 1 extra, and I'll throw in 30 yuan for cigarettes. Wang Laosan, you calculating bastard, Li the cripple laughed. Last time, Hongxia charged me 150 per round. Fair price, no complaints. Zhao Dabiao kept quiet, smoking in silence, but his eyes never left my waist. It was slim, hadn't lost its shape even after having a kid. The kid was off at school in the city, came home maybe once a month. My 3 brick rooms sat empty most of the time.
Just me.
I dropped my cigarette and ground it out with my shoe. I stood up and grabbed my wallet. A few coins rattled inside. I looked at Wang Laosan, then at Zhao Dabiao and Li the cripple, and I smiled. That smile must have looked strange under the dim light. My lips curled up, but my eyes stayed dead. For 130, I said slowly. You 3 pool together. Whoever offers the most, I go home with him tonight. The rest of the debt, we'll deal with it later. What do you mean? Li the cripple blinked. I undid the top button of my blouse, showing a strip of pale skin below my collarbone. Whoever pays more gets me tonight. Simple. All three went silent. The air felt like it had been sucked out of the room. The light bulb flickered, and the shadows on the wall trembled. Wang Laosan swallowed. Zhao Dabiao stubbed out his cigarette. Li the cripple tapped the table 3 times. Zhao Dabiao spoke first. 200. One time tonight, nothing extra. The other 230 you owe me, we'll settle next time. 250, Li the cripple cut in. Hongxia, you did a good job last time. I've been thinking about it. Wang Laosan's face twisted, then he gritted his teeth. 300. Tonight you come with me, 1 round, and the whole 430 debt is wiped. I'll even throw in 30 for cigarettes. I looked down at my open button and suddenly felt sick. Not sick of these 3 men. Sick of myself. Because I was seriously comparing who offered more.
300 yuan.
More expensive than a village chicken, cheaper than a piglet. Enough for 3 days of mahjong if my luck held. Deal. I buttoned back up, grabbed my wallet and walked toward the door. Wang Laosan, go home first. I'll wash up and come over. He chuckled and slapped Li the cripple's shoulder on the way out. Sorry, brother. Next time you pick first. Li, the cripple spat on the floor. Zhao Dabiao cleaned up the mahjong tiles without a word. When I stepped out of Zhao Dabiao's front room, the moon was huge, painting the ground white like frost. Night wind slipped into my collar, and I shivered. At the end of the dirt road by the village entrance, that was the direction Liu Pingkui had walked when he left for work. I stood there for a while. Maybe I was thinking about nothing. Maybe I was thinking about everything. But it all drowned under the clatter of mahjong tiles echoing in my head. I started walking home. Passing the old pagoda tree at the village entrance, a black cat darted out from underneath, its green eyes flashing in the dark. Out of nowhere, I remembered how Liu Pingkui looked the last time he came home. He was thinner, darker. His hands were covered in calluses and cracks. When he handed me a stack of money, his fingers were bent. He couldn't even straighten them. That night Liu Pingkui came home, he wanted to touch me. I pushed him away, told him he smelled like sweat. The next morning he left. He stood at the door for a while, like he wanted to say something, but in the end he said nothing. I shook the thought out of my head and walked faster toward home. There was still half a thermos of hot water left, and I needed to clean myself up before Wang Laosan got impatient. After all, tonight's price was 300 yuan. Worth it. When I came out of the bath, the moon was hidden behind clouds. I wiped my hair with a towel, standing barefoot on the cement floor. The cold crept up from my soles. In the mirror, my reflection was blurry. I leaned closer. There were fine lines at the corners of my eyes, but my skin was still fair. I patted on some snow cream, the cheap kind, 2 yuan a packet, so sweet-smelling it was almost sickening. My phone buzzed. Wang Laosan, not ready yet. I didn't reply. I dried my hair slowly, changed into clean underwear, threw a thin jacket over it. At the door I hesitated. I stood there and smoked a cigarette. The smoke drifted into the dark, and I watched the little glowing tip flicker on and off. It hit me that my life was like cigarette ash. Looks like there's still a spark, but one flick and it's gone. I flicked the butt into the night. It traced an arc through the air and hit the ground in a spray of tiny sparks. Lock the door.
Go.
Wang Laosan's place was on the west side of the village, 3 alleys from mine. I walked slowly. A stray dog barked at me on the road. I kicked at it, and it ran off with its tail between its legs. The wind made the cornstalks along the road rustle. It sounded like people whispering. His gate was half open when I got there. Left that way on purpose, waiting for me. I pushed through into the yard. The bare bulb was on, throwing dim yellow light over a floor covered with cigarette butts and peanut shells. The front room door was open too. Wang Laosan sat on the couch smoking. When he saw me, his eyes lit up and he jumped to his feet. All washed up? He asked, with that fake politeness in his voice. Yeah. I scraped the mud off my slippers on the threshold and stepped inside. His front room was small. A square table, an old sofa, a 20-inch TV playing some low-budget war drama with the volume turned so low it was just a hum. The air smelled like smoke and mildew and something else, that hard-to-describe man smell. Want some water? He poured a cup and handed it to me, all eager. I took it but didn't drink. Set it on the table. I leaned against the sofa armrest, crossed my legs, and pulled out a cigarette. He stared at me. His eyes slid from my face to my neck, then from my neck to my legs. His Adam's apple bobbed up and down. Stop staring, I said, blowing out smoke. You want to look all night or get it over with? He chuckled and sat down next to me. His hand landed on my knee like it belonged there. I didn't flinch. Didn't look at his hand either. I kept my eyes on the TV screen, where some soldier was firing a gun. When's your wife coming back? I asked. Day after tomorrow. His hand slid higher.
No Rus.
Plenty of time. I held the cigarette in my mouth and used my free hand to lift his hand off my leg. He froze, thinking I was backing out. His face started to change. Then I said, Go wash up first. You stink of sweat. It's disgusting. He opened his mouth, almost argued, but then got up and went to the bathroom like a good boy. The water started running. I sat on the sofa alone, finished my half-smoked cigarette, and lit another one. I thought about the last time at his place. 2 months ago. I'd lost 300 yuan, came over just like this after bath. He'd been drinking that night. Reeked of liquor. He went at it for nearly an hour. I didn't make a sound the whole time. I stared at a crack in the ceiling and calculated how to win my money back at mahjong the next day. When he was done, he tried to hold me and sleep. I told him I had soup on the stove at home, got dressed, and left. I hadn't walked far before I was squatting by the drainage ditch, dry heaving. Not pregnant. Just disgusted. But the next day, when I showed up at the mahjong table with his debt clearance slip, those 300 yuan were wiped clean. I played all afternoon, and my luck was good. Won back over 100. That evening I actually cooked myself 2 dishes and drank half a beer. I thought to myself, this kind of life wasn't so bad. The water stopped. Wang Laosan came out in a pair of big shorts, hair dripping, an old towel draped over his shoulders. He rubbed his hands together, grinning with that look of a man who couldn't wait. I stubbed out my cigarette, stood up, and took off my jacket, draping it over the back of the sofa. He came up and wrapped his arms around my waist. His hands were rough as steel wool, black grime still packed under his fingernails. I could smell soap on him, but underneath it there was still that sour stench of fermented smoke and alcohol. I turned my head away when he tried to kiss me. Turn off the light, I said. He didn't want to, but he reached over and flipped the switch. The bulb swung twice and went dark. The room turned black. Only a thin sliver of moonlight leaked through the gap in the curtains, drawing a pale line across the floor. In the dark, he shoved me down onto the sofa. The spring screeched. The back of my head hit the armrest, and I winced from the pain. He climbed on top of me, breathing heavy like a bull, hot breath hitting my neck. Wet, sticky. I closed my eyes. I couldn't see the ceiling in the dark, but I knew the crack was there. 2 months ago, I'd stare at that crack and counted debts. Tonight, I stared into nothing and thought about nothing. Or maybe I was thinking one thing, when would I not have to do this anymore? His hands moved over my body. He mumbled my name between heavy breaths. Hongxia, Hongxia. Each time more urgent. I lay there without moving, like a piece of wood. My body had no response at all, but Wang Laosan didn't care. He just needed something there. Whether it was a person or a log made no difference to him. Halfway through, he suddenly stopped, panting. Turn over, he said. I flipped onto my side, facing the sofa back. The leather was cold against my cheek. I smelled the leather, and underneath it, the sweat of some man, who knows which one, from before. It hit me that this sofa was like a coffin. His movements got faster. He started saying crude things. I let the words go in one ear and out the other. My attention was somewhere else, the window. There were footsteps outside. Quiet, but I heard them. My eyes snapped open, and my whole body went stiff. Wait. I pushed at Wang Laosan. Wait for what? He was in the middle of it and wouldn't stop. Someone's outside. Wang Laosan paused for a second but then kept going. Middle of the night. Who'd be out there? You heard wrong. I listened harder. The footsteps were gone. Maybe I imagined it. Maybe it was just the wind. I relaxed and closed my eyes again. A few more minutes and Wang Laosan finally finished. He rolled off me and lay on the sofa gasping for air like a fish thrown on dry land. I sat up and felt around in the dark for my underwear and jacket, putting them on one piece at a time. Leaving already, he sounded reluctant. Stay a while. No, I zipped up my jacket. We're square? Square, square. He gave my thigh a satisfied pat and handed me the 30 yuan he'd already prepared. Playing mahjong tomorrow. We'll see. I took the money, found my slippers in the dark, and started for the door. I stopped and looked back. He'd lit a cigarette. The red tip blinked on and off in the blackness.
Wang Laosan, I said.
That thing you mentioned before, think it over. What thing? If your wife really can't stand living with you anymore, what are you going to do? He blinked, then laughed. What? You want to marry me? I didn't answer. I pulled the door open and walked out. The moon was back, flooding the yard with light. I hurried through the gate and headed home. At the corner of the alley, I stopped dead. A figure stood in the dark. My heart skipped. When I made out who it was, my blood went cold. Zhao Dabiao. He was leaning against the power pole at the mouth of the alley, a cigarette pinched between his fingers, its tip blinking in the dark. He looked at me. I looked at him. Neither of us spoke. We just stared at each other across a few meters for several seconds. He spoke first. That same muffled voice, like it came from inside a jar. Sister Hongxia, that 230 you owe me. When are you paying? My lips moved. I wanted to say something, but my throat felt blocked. He dropped his cigarette, crushed it under his foot, and walked toward me. I stepped back, without thinking. Zhao Dabiao wasn't tall, but he was solid. Years of chopping wood on the mountain and hauling cement bags had made his arms thick as tree roots. He reached me and grabbed my wrist. His grip was terrifying, like an iron clamp locking down. Let go. My voice came out tight. He didn't. He looked down at me. The moonlight turned half his face white. The other half sank into shadow. He looked like a stone statue, with no expression. Sister Hongxia, he said. I'm asking you. 230. When I struggled. Couldn't break free. My wrist bones ached under his fingers, a deep numb pain spreading through. I took a breath and tried to keep the trembling out of my voice.
Next month.
Okay, next month. His tone didn't change, flat, neither hot nor cold. That's what you said last month. And the month before. How many next months have you given me? Let me count 3. 3 months, Sister Hongxia. 230 yuan, dragged out 3 months. I had nothing to say. He was right. Zhao Dabiao wasn't like Wang Laosan. Wang Laosan was easy to deal with. Li the cripple was easy to deal with. Those two had both gotten what they wanted from me, so the scales balanced and nobody felt cheated. But Zhao Dabiao was different. He was quiet, didn't talk much, didn't smile much. Won or lost at mahjong without a word. Even after sleeping with me, he said nothing, pulled his pants on and left, like it never happened. 3 months ago, I owed him 230. I promised to pay the next day. But the next day my luck turned and I won money, and I didn't feel like paying anymore. He came asking twice after that. I brushed him off both times. Once said I was short on cash. Once said wait a little longer. After that he stopped coming, and I figured the whole thing had blown over. Turns out he hadn't forgotten. He'd been waiting all along. Let go, I said, struggling again. Grabbing me in the street like this, what does that look like? The street? Zhao Dabiao let out a short laugh. It was brief, like a flash of lightning, there and gone. When you walked out of Wang Laosan's house just now, did you worry about the street? When you were sleeping with him, did you worry about what it looked like? My face burned. I wanted to fire something back, but he didn't give me the chance. He gripped my wrist and yanked me from the alley mouth into the deeper part of the side lane. It was narrower there, high mud walls on both sides, no moonlight reaching in, dark as the bottom of a well. My foot caught on the uneven ground, and I nearly fell. I put my hand on his chest and pushed. He didn't budge. With one hand, he pinned both my wrists behind my back. With the other, he pressed my shoulder and shoved me against the wall. The mud wall was ice cold and rough, digging into my spine. Zhao Dabiao, are you crazy? I hissed, keeping my voice down. I didn't dare shout and wake the neighbors. I'm not crazy. His mouth was right next to my ear, hot breath hitting it. voice so low only I could hear. I just want to ask you, Wang Laosan gets to sleep with you, Li the cripple gets to sleep with you, Zhang Lao gets to sleep with you. So, why do I have to wait? My mind raced. I knew I wasn't getting out of this tonight. Zhao Dabiao seemed quiet on the surface, but deep down he was stubborn as stone. Once he set his mind on something, 10 oxen couldn't drag him back. If he didn't get what he wanted, he wasn't letting me go. Fine. I took a deep breath. 230. We settle tonight. After this, we're even. He didn't answer. One hand held my wrists, the other pulled at my pants. I was wearing loose pajama bottoms with an elastic waist. They came down with one tug. The night air rushed in and I shivered. I bit my lip and turned my head, staring into the thick darkness at the far end of the alley. His movements weren't frantic like Wang Laosan's or drawn out like Li the cripple's. He was silent. Unnervingly silent. He didn't make a sound the whole time. Just heavy breathing echoing through the narrow alley, like an ox with its head down eating grass. I leaned against the wall, head tilted back, looking up at the thin strip of sky above. The moon had disappeared behind clouds again. Not a single star. I thought about what had crossed my mind on Wang Laosan's sofa, that my life was like cigarette ash. Looks like there's still a spark, but one flick and it's gone. Now I felt like even that little spark had gone out. Zhao Dabiao suddenly sped up, then stopped hard, his whole body slumping against me. He stayed there panting for a long time. I couldn't breathe under his weight. I shoved him. Get off. Zhao Dabiao straightened up, pulled his pants on, and stepped back. I stayed leaning against the wall. My legs were weak. I bent down slowly and pulled my pajama bottoms up for my ankles. My fingers were shaking. When I tried to fix the elastic waistband, my hands shook so bad I couldn't do it. He stood 2 steps away and pulled out a cigarette. When the lighter flicked on, I caught a glimpse of his face. Same as always, no expression at all. Like an unpainted mud wall. Are we square? My voice came out so hoarse it didn't sound like mine. He took a drag and said nothing. I asked you if we're square. My voice shot up suddenly, bouncing off the narrow alley walls. He glanced at me, then slowly nodded. I turned and walked away fast, almost running. My slippers slapped against the mud. I didn't dare look back. Didn't dare stop. If I stopped, I felt like I'd collapse right there on the ground. I cut through 2 alleys, turned a corner, and finally saw my own front gate with its peeling paint. I fumbled the key out and jabbed at the lock several times before it went in. Pushed the door open, rushed inside, slammed it shut behind me, slid the bolt, and then slid down the door until I was sitting on the ground.
I didn't cry.
My tears had dried up a long time ago. Maybe after one of those nights, leaving Wang Laosan's place. Maybe after leaving Li the cripple's. I couldn't remember which time. All I knew was that my eyes were dry and my heart was dry, like an old well baked empty by the sun.
I sat on the ground for a long time.
Long enough that the cold from the cement floor soaked all the way through me. Then my phone buzzed. I pulled it from my pocket. The blue screen lit up half my face. A message from Li the cripple. One line. Hongxia, tomorrow afternoon we need a 4th. You coming? I stared at those words for a long time. My finger hovered over the screen. Finally, I typed one word. Coming. Hit send. I tossed the phone on the floor and reached into my pocket for my cigarettes. Empty. I crushed the box flat and threw it into the corner where it joined a small mountain of other empty packs. I sat there on the ground with my face buried in my knees. The house was quiet. The old clock on the wall ticked away, tick, 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 each one like a hammer hitting my bones. After a while, the phone buzzed again. Not Li the cripple this time. Wang Laosan. He'd sent a voice message. I tapped it, and his raspy voice filled the empty room. Hongxia, that thing you asked me when you left, I thought about it. If you really want to be with me, I'll go ahead and dump that ugly wife of mine. I laughed when I heard that. A quiet laugh, dry and rough, like wind scraping through dead leaves. I didn't reply. I put the phone face down on the floor and lay down. The cement was ice cold. I curled up like a bug that had been stepped on. There was a crack in the ceiling. Moonlight came through the window and landed right on it. I stared at that crack and remembered the last time at Wang Laosan's place, lying on his sofa staring at his ceiling, calculating my mahjong debts. Tonight, I didn't want to calculate anything. I closed my eyes. Zhao Dabiao's expressionless face drifted up. Then Wang Laosan's eyes sneaking glances down my collar. Then Li the cripple's crooked grin. Then Zhang Lao's sweaty hands. One after another, spinning past like a lantern carousel. And the last face that floated up was Liu Pingkui's, standing at the door, looking like he wanted to say something, saying nothing, turning and walking away. My eyes snapped open. The crack was still on the ceiling. The moonlight was still on me. Nothing had changed. But somehow, that crack looked a little wider than before. I woke up because the sun hit my face. Light poured through a hole in the window and landed right on me, hot as a branding iron. I rolled over, and the back of my head knocked the hard cement floor. I winced. Then I remembered. I'd slept on the ground all night. I sat up. Every bone in my body felt like it had come apart. My lower back ached so bad I couldn't straighten up. My neck was stiff from sleeping wrong, couldn't turn it without pain. I held the wall and pulled myself up. My legs were so numb they didn't feel like mine. I took 2 steps, and it was like walking on cotton. The ashtray in the front room was overflowing with cigarette butts. Empty packs scattered across the floor. I checked the clock, almost 10. My phone was on the ground. I bent over and picked it up. 7 unread messages. 3 from Wang Laosan. 2 from Li the cripple. 2 from a number I didn't know, asking if I wanted a loan. I didn't bother with Wang Laosan's messages. Opened Li the cripple's instead. Hongxia, noon at 12. Wang Laosan's place. Need a 4th. Answer me, are you coming or not? I threw the phone on the bed and went to the kitchen. There was leftover rice from 2 days ago sitting cold in the pot. Half a bowl of pickled vegetables on the counter, gone sour. I sniffed it, dumped it in the trash, poured boiling water over the cold rice, and ate it with a raw scallion. After eating, I stood under the faucet and rinsed off. Early autumn water was already cool. It hit my skin and raised goosebumps everywhere. I gritted my teeth and finished, dried off with an old towel, and looked at myself in the mirror. The woman staring back had a waxy yellow face. Bags under her eyes drooping low. The fine lines at the corners seemed deeper than yesterday. I touched my cheek. The skin was dry as sandpaper. I squeezed out a big glob of snow cream and smeared it on my face, rubbing hard until my skin turned red. While changing clothes, I found a pale yellow stain on my underwear that wouldn't wash out. I balled it up and shoved it to the back of the closet. Put on a fresh one. At 11:30, I walked out the door. The sun was blazing, hot enough to soften the asphalt road. I wore a straw hat and a long-sleeved floral blouse, every button done up to the top. Passing the village shop, the owner Zhang Tsuehua was shelling edamame by the door. She saw me and gave me a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Oh, Hongxia, all buttoned up today? Afraid of the sun? I grunted and kept walking. Behind me, she muttered something to the person next to her, just loud enough for me to hear. Button up all you want. Everyone knows what's underneath. The other person laughed. My step faltered for a second, but I didn't turn around. I kept walking, hat brim pulled low, hiding half my face. When I got to Wang Laosan's place, the table was already set up. Li the cripple was there. Zhao Dabiao was there too. When I walked in, all 3 of them looked up at the same time. Wang Laosan's eyes traveled over me. Li the cripple flashed a grin. Zhao Dabiao glanced once and dropped his head, hands shuffling the mahjong tiles. We've been waiting for you. Wang Laosan patted the chair next to him. Sit here. I didn't take that chair. I pulled one from the opposite side and sat down. Took off my straw hat, set it on the corner of the table, and lit a cigarette. How much are we playing for? I asked. Same as always, 5 yuan per multiplier, Li the cripple said. Hongxia, you got enough cash? If not, I've got enough. I blew smoke across the table. Quit talking. Let's play. The tiles clattered to life. My fingers slid across them, and that familiar feeling steadied my heartbeat a little. I drew a tile, one of bamboo. Useless. Tossed it. Drew another. Also useless. 3 rounds in, I was down over 80. Li the cripple won a hand and reached for his money with a grin. I dug a wrinkled 50 and a 20 out of my pocket and slapped them on the table. He counted and said I was short 15. I fished out 2 coins, a 10 and a 5, and tossed them over. "Not your day, Sister Hongxia," he said while pocketing the money. "Relax, we're just getting started." I shoved the tiles into the automatic shuffler and hit the switch. The machine hummed and pushed up a fresh set. I stacked my tiles, flipped them over, and my heart lifted a little. 2 red dragons and a green dragon. If I could win this hand, I'd get most of my losses back. 4th round, I was 1 tile away from winning. I needed a 6 of circles. Wang Laosan threw 1 out. I slammed my hand down on the table. 1. I spread my tiles, a clean flush, all pairs, several multipliers stacked up. Wang Laosan counted it out. He owed me 160. See? I slipped the money into my pocket, and for the first time all day my mouth curved into something like a smile. Luck turns just like that. Zhao Dabiao barely spoke the whole time, played his tiles, paid when he lost, and that was it. No extra words between us. Last night in the alley might as well have never happened. I didn't look at him either. The mahjong table sat between us like a mountain. Around 6 o'clock I added everything up. I was up about 40 yuan. Not much, but at least I hadn't lost. I stood up and said it was getting late. Li the cripple complained, wanted 2 more rounds. I said no. Walking out of Wang Laosan's place, the sky was fading. A strip of red hung on the western horizon. The east was already black. I followed the village road home. Near the entrance, I saw a minivan parked there. The door was open. Inside sat a few men I didn't recognize, wearing dusty construction site camo, covered in grime. I didn't pay attention and was about to walk past when someone inside called out, "Sister-in-law?" I stopped and turned around. A tall, skinny man climbed out of the van. He was covered in dust from head to toe. The only clean thing about him was his white teeth when he smiled. It took me a moment to recognize him. Chen Ziyuan, Liu Pingkui's co-worker from the construction site. From the next county over. He'd come home with Pingkui a couple of times before. "Sister-in-law, it's me, Xiao Chen." He walked up carrying a duffel bag. "Brother Pingkui asked me to pass along a message." My heart jumped. "What message?" His expression turned awkward. He looked down, set the bag on the ground, pulled an envelope from inside, and handed it to me. "Brother Pingkui collapsed at the site a few days ago. They took him to the hospital, liver cirrhosis, pretty serious. The foreman told him to go home and rest. He couldn't get a direct ticket. He's transferring in the provincial capital. Should be home the day after tomorrow." I took the envelope. Didn't open it. Just held it, feeling the weight. "He told me to tell you," Chen Ziyuan hesitated, "to play less mahjong. Be careful with the money at home." His condition. He probably can't do heavy labor anymore. He looked at me one more time, like he wanted to say something else, but in the end he just sighed, turned around, and got back in the van. The van started up, blew exhaust all over me, and drove off. I stood at the village entrance holding that envelope for a long time. I tore it open. Inside was a stack of cash. Old bills, wrinkled, some smeared with black grease. I counted, 2,000 even. Not a yuan more, not a yuan less. There was also a slip of paper with crooked handwriting. "Hongxia, spend carefully." I crumpled the note into a ball and stuffed it in my pocket. Put the money back in the envelope and tucked it inside my shirt against my chest. I started walking home, then stopped after a few steps. The day after tomorrow, Liu Pingkui was coming back. I stood on the road as the wind blew my hair all over the place. I suddenly remembered the last time he came home. That night he wanted to touch me, and I pushed him away because he smelled like sweat. When he came back the day after tomorrow, would he still want to touch me? I didn't know. Then I thought about last night, Zhao Dabiao dragging me into the alley, Wang Laosan's sofa, Li the cripple's sweaty hands. These pictures buzzed around my head like flies. Couldn't chase them away, couldn't kill them. I stood there in the dusk at the village entrance, and my throat went dry. I wanted a cigarette. I reached into my pocket, empty box. I turned and walked to the shop. Zhang Suehua was closing up, but when she saw me, she opened the door again. I bought a pack of cigarettes. 5 yuan Haidman brand. While making change, she looked at me and said, Hongxia, is your Pingkui coming home? My hand froze. How do you know? When that van stopped just now, I went over and had a listen. She said it like it was the most natural thing in the world. Nothing stays secret in this village. Let me tell you, Hongxia, Pingkui's a good man. Don't you wrong him. I took the coins from her and squeezed them in my palm. Said nothing. I opened the pack, pulled out a cigarette, lit it, took a deep drag, and walked into the darkness. Behind me, Zhang Suihua's voice kept floating over. Did you hear what I said? A person's got to have a conscience. I walked faster. Conscience. I repeated that word in my head. Said it twice. It didn't taste like anything. All I knew was that the day after tomorrow Liu Pingkui was coming home, and in my pocket I had just 140 yuan. I woke up early the next day. Not because I wanted to, because I couldn't sleep. It was still dark when my eyes opened. I tossed and turned, my mind tangled like a ball of knotted thread. The news that Liu Pingkui was coming home sat in my chest like a thorn. It didn't hurt exactly, but it pressed against something. I lay there until past 8, then couldn't stand it anymore. Got up and boiled a bowl of plain noodle soup with an egg dropped in. It was one of the last 2 eggs in the house. I thought about it, then cracked the second one in 2. After eating, I left the dishes soaking in the sink and sat in the doorway to soak up the sun. Autumn's sun isn't harsh. It felt warm on my skin. I squinted at the crooked jujube tree in the yard. There were still dates hanging on it. Nobody picked them. Nobody ate them. My phone buzzed. Li the cripple. Hongxia, noon again today. 12 o'clock, Wang Laosan's place. You won yesterday. Your turn to treat. I stared at the message. Yesterday, I'd won about 40. If I went today, that 40 was as good as gone. But my hands were itching again. Sitting in the doorway doing nothing made my skin crawl, like lice were biting me all over. I typed back one word, coming. At noon I showed up at Wang Laosan's right on time. The table had a new face today. Wang Laosan was still Wang Laosan, Li the cripple was still Li the cripple, but Zhao Dabiao was gone. In his place sat a man around 40, surnamed Zhou. Everyone called him Zhou Hardware because he ran a hardware store in town. Zhou Hardware was fat. His belly stuck out like an overturned pot. The chair groaned under him. He wore gold-rimmed glasses, and when he smiled, the rolls of flesh on his face jiggled. I'd never played with him before. This was the first time. Sister Hongxia, what an honor. He stuck out his hand. I didn't take it. He pulled it back with an awkward grin. Wang Laosan chuckled beside him. Old Zhou, what honor are you talking about? Zhou Hardware winked and said nothing. The game started. My luck was wrong from the very first hand. Every tile I drew was garbage. Lonely ones, blank whites, scattered winds. Couldn't form a single pair. First round, I dealt into Wang Laosan's winning hand. Lost 40. Second round, Li the cripple self-drew. I owed 16 more. Third round was the worst. Zhou Hardware won on a bonus draw after a Kong. 5 multipliers. I alone had to pay 80. 3 rounds and 136 yuan gone. My face must have looked bad. I clamped a cigarette between my lips, squinted at my tiles, and ran my fingers back and forth across them like I was stroking a misbehaving child's face. Not your day, Sister Hongxia. Zhou Hardware counted his winnings with a grin. Laosan told me you won yesterday. I thought you were an expert. Luck changes fast. I pushed the tiles into the shuffler. My voice gave away nothing. Fourth round, I was 1 tile from winning. I held a 3 and a 5 of characters, waiting for a 4. Waited 4 turns. No 4 came. Instead, I drew a 9 of bamboo. I threw the 9 out. Zhou Hardware slapped the table.
1.
Pinch 9, double multiplier. I checked his tiles. He really did have the pinch 9. I squeezed the 3 of characters in my hand until it creaked, then tossed it into the pile. How much? 36. He held up 3 fingers, face shining with grease and satisfaction. I pulled out the cash and counted 36. Threw it across. The 40-something I'd won yesterday was gone. I was nearly 100 in the hole on top of it. I felt my pocket. The envelope was still there, the one Liu Pingkui had sent back with 2,000 yuan inside. I hesitated, then left it alone. That was his medical money. I didn't know how much liver cirrhosis cost to treat, but 2,000 definitely wasn't enough. If I gambled it away, what would he use to see a doctor when he got home? But my hands started shaking again. Not from fear. From the craving. It felt like someone was scratching the inside of my chest, one slow stroke after another, making it impossible to sit still. I wanted to win it back. Win back everything I'd lost. It's the gambler's disease. I knew that better than anyone. But I couldn't stop. Just like I couldn't stop my hand from lighting cigarettes, couldn't stop my legs from carrying me to the mahjong table. Again, I crushed out my cigarette in the ashtray. The game went on. By a little past 4, I was down 180. My pocket held one last 20 yuan bill, change from buying cigarettes that morning. Li the cripple had won big today, and couldn't stop smiling. He glanced at me, his eyes rolled with a thought, and he leaned in close. Hongxia, are you out of money? I ignored him. How about this? His voice dropped even lower. You still owe me 150 from last month. Add today's losses. Let me figure it up. 150 plus 180. That's 330. Come to my place tonight, and we'll settle up. I looked up at him. His face was inches from mine. I could see the blackheads on his nose, and the 2 hairs growing out of the mole by his mouth. His eyes had that glow. I'd seen it 1,000 times. Same as Wang Laosan. Same as Zhao Dabiao. Same as Zhang Laowu. 330, I said slowly. How do you plan to settle it? Li the cripple licked his lips. 2 rounds. 160 each. You stay a little longer and I'll throw in 10 yuan extra. I laughed. It wasn't loud, but it sounded strange at the mahjong table. Wang Laosan and Zhou Hardware both looked up. I waved them off. Nothing's wrong. Then turned to Li the cripple and spoke word by word. 3 rounds. 130 each. If you don't agree, I'll go to Wang Laosan instead. He blinked, then did the math fast. 3 rounds instead of 2. He got an extra turn. I got an extra 60 yuan. He thought for 3 seconds and nodded.
Fine.
3 rounds it is. He swallowed hard. Tonight at 8. My place. I said nothing. I slapped my last 20 on the table. 1 more round. That round I didn't lose and didn't win. Broke even. When the game ended, Zhou Hardware stood up with his leather bag, patted his belly, and said to me, Sister Hongxia, I'll be back next time. Better fix that luck of yours. I didn't bother answering. I put my straw hat on and walked out. Autumn days are short. It was barely past 5, and the sky was already dimming. I walked home slower than yesterday. I didn't want to go back. The house was empty. Liu Pingkui wouldn't arrive until tomorrow. Tonight I'd be alone again. No, not alone. Tonight I had to go to Li the cripple's place. I got to my front door, but didn't go inside. I squatted there and smoked a cigarette. The sunset stretched my shadow long across the dirt road, thin and crooked like a dried-out snake. I looked at that shadow, and it felt like a stranger's. Not a person's shadow, more like a pile of mud. I thought about the last time Liu Pingkui came home. He was squatting in the yard trying to fix that broken motorcycle. Worked on it half the day, couldn't get it running, sweat pouring down his face. I wiped his face with a towel, and he looked up at me. There was something in his eyes I couldn't name. Not gratitude. Not happiness. It was a deep exhaustion, like a man who'd walked an impossibly long road and finally spotted a place to rest. But I didn't let him rest. That night I wanted to play mahjong. They needed a 4th. I was rushing to get out the door. He said, Can you not go tonight? I didn't listen. Changed my shoes and left. At the door I glanced back. He was standing in the front room, still holding the towel I'd used on his face. Just standing there. Not saying a word. Now I remembered he'd already gotten a lot thinner by then. I just hadn't noticed. I flicked the cigarette away, stood up, and went inside. I boiled water and washed myself carefully. This time I didn't dry my hair slowly. Didn't pat cream on my face. Didn't pick out nice underwear. I just scrubbed myself clean, the way a butcher rinses a piece of pork. No feeling in it at all. After the bath, I put on clean clothes, the floral blouse Liu Pingkui had bought me. I checked the mirror. Wet hair plastered to my face. White lips. 2 dark blue-black shadows under my eyes. I didn't look 38. I looked 48. My phone buzzed. Li the cripple. Hongxia, nobody's home. Come over. I stared at the message for a few seconds and typed 2 words. On my way. I pocketed the phone, grabbed my cigarettes and lighter, and at the door I turned back to look at the house one more time. 3 brick rooms. Cement floor. Old furniture. A family photo of the 3 of us hanging on the wall. I'd lived here over 10 years, but I'd never once felt like it was my home. I locked the door and left. The moon wasn't up yet. The sky was pure black. I walked toward Li the cripple's place, not fast, not slow. Wind rustled through the corn along the road. Somewhere far off a dog howled, one long cry, one short, like weeping. His gate was half open, light spilling out. I pushed through and stepped into the front room. Something felt off right away. The lights were on. The TV was on too, but turned so low I could barely hear it. Li the cripple wasn't in the room. From the kitchen came the clang of a spatula against a wok and a cloud of cooking smoke. You're here? His voice drifted from the kitchen.
Sit down.
I'm frying up a dish. Almost done. I froze. Every time I'd come to his house before, there was never any cooking involved. Last time I came, he was waiting in the bedroom. Didn't even pour me a glass of water. Why was he suddenly making dinner? I sat down on the wooden bench and looked around. His place was even messier than Wang Laosan's. Cigarette butts and sunflower seed shells all over the floor. The newspaper pasted on the walls had turned yellow and brittle, corners peeling up to show the mud brick underneath. On the table sat a plate of peanuts and 2 bottles of beer, caps already popped. While I was smoking, he came out of the kitchen carrying a plate of scrambled eggs, his apron spotted with grease. He set it on the table, rubbed his hands together, and grinned. Hongxia, eat something first. Line your stomach. I looked at the eggs. They were overcooked, turning black, loaded with chili peppers. I didn't touch them. I tapped my ash on the floor. What's gotten into you today? Sun rise in the west. He gave a couple of nervous laughs, but didn't explain. He untied his apron, tossed it aside, sat down, and poured himself a beer. He drained half the glass in one gulp, wiped his mouth, and looked at me with something strange in his eyes. Hongxia, let's take it slow tonight. No rush. The way he said it carried a kind of excitement I'd never heard from him before. I frowned, didn't respond. He drank 2 more glasses, ate half the peanuts, then got up and walked to the TV cabinet. He bent down and started rummaging through something underneath. I heard rustling, sounded like plastic bags. After a moment, he straightened up.
He was holding a disc.
No cover. Just a bare silver disc with 2 characters scrawled on it in marker. Premium. My heart dropped. What's that? My voice tightened without me meaning it to. He didn't answer. He walked to the TV and slid the disc into the DVD player mounted below it. The machine was ancient, over 10 years old, buttons worn smooth, but it still worked. The disc spun a few times, the screen flickered, and then the picture came on. I looked for 1 second and turned my head away. A man and a woman on the screen.
No clothes.
Doing things that made my stomach turn. The volume was low, but those sounds echoed through the empty room and made my skin crawl. Li the cripple, turn that off. My voice went cold. Turn it off. Why? He sat back down, took another swig of beer, his tongue getting loose. Hongxia, look at them, so many tricks. We've been doing the same old thing every time. Let's learn something new tonight. I stood up to leave. He grabbed my wrist. His grip was strong. He limped around like a cripple all day and looked like a broken man, but there was nothing weak about his hands. He jerked me so hard I stumbled and nearly fell into him. Let go, I said, keeping my voice low. Hongxia, his tone changed. Gone was the joking, grinning voice. It turned dark. You owe me 330.
3 rounds.
Plus I'm giving you 60 on top. We agreed. You can't back out now. I glared at him. He glared back. The TV kept going, getting louder and more ridiculous, mixed with filthy words I couldn't even understand. Cold sweat broke out on my back. I knew tonight wasn't going to be easy. I didn't say I'm not paying up, I said, steadying my voice. But that nasty stuff on the screen, I'm not doing any of it. What's nasty about it? He pointed at the TV. They're people too, aren't they? If they can do it, why can't we? Hongxia, you're not some innocent little girl. What are you so shy about? I bit down hard and sat back down. I wanted to leave, but I owed Li the cripple 330. That was a real debt. I'd lost my last 20 that afternoon. My pockets were cleaner than my face. Tomorrow Liu Pingkui was coming home. I couldn't be arguing with Li the cripple about money right in front of him. Fine. I took a deep breath. Tonight. 3 rounds. After that, we're even. Li the cripple's eyes lit up. He said good 3 times in a row. He downed another glass of beer, and when he stood up he burped. A wave of sour stink hit me in the face. I turned my head and held my breath until it passed. Come on inside. He wrapped his arm around my waist and pushed me toward the bedroom. He steered me past the TV. On the screen, the man and woman had shifted into some new position. The woman was face down on the bed, the man standing on the floor. It looked like a circus act. I looked away. His bedroom was small, a bed barely 5 feet wide. The sheets were supposed to be dark blue, but you couldn't tell what color they'd been originally. One pillow, greasy, reeking of hair oil. On the nightstand sat an opened bottle of lubricant and a roll of toilet paper, obviously set out ahead of time. I stood beside the bed, without moving. He shut the bedroom door and pulled the curtains closed. The curtains were too short. A hand-width gap at the bottom let moonlight in, casting a pale, white line across the floor. The TV sounds leaked through the wall from the front room, muffled, but still audible. Those embarrassing noises. Hongxia. He came over rubbing his hands. Let's do this in order tonight. What order? The order on the disc. He said it with a straight face. I've watched it 3 times. 9 different positions. We'll do 3 tonight. 1 position per round. Deal. It was so absurd I wanted to laugh. But the laugh wouldn't come. Fine, I said. What else could I say? I lay face down on the bed. The smell hit my nose, sweat, smoke, and some kind of sour stench all mixed together. I buried my face in my own arms to block it out. His hands found my waist. His technique was different from before. In the past, he'd just rush through it and be done. Tonight, he was treating it like a construction project, following every step from that disc like it was an instruction manual. He was even mumbling to himself like a student reviewing homework. I kept my eyes closed and focused on one thing, the gap in the curtains. Moonlight came through that gap. I could see a sliver of the moon, curved like a sickle blade. I stared at it for a long time, watching it inch behind the curtain edge, like someone slowly drawing a stage curtain shut. The first position took almost 20 minutes. When he finished, he didn't roll off right away. He collapsed on my back, panting, and mumbled. The disc said 20 minutes. I timed it. I said nothing. I flipped over onto my back and stared at the unlit light bulb on the ceiling. It was coated in dust. A few dead insects were stuck to it, dark little specks like mouse droppings. 10-minute break, then number 2. He lit a cigarette and leaned against the headboard. I lit one too. We lay side by side smoking, like a married couple. If someone had looked in through the window, they might have thought we were an ordinary village husband and wife resting after a day's work. But we weren't husband and wife. We weren't even lovers. We were creditor and debtor. The second position started. I raised my legs. I'd seen it on the disc earlier and thought no human body could actually bend that way. But now Li the cripple wanted me to do it, so I clenched my teeth and did it. My flexibility was bad. I couldn't get my legs to the right angle. It hurt so much that sweat beaded on my forehead. He wasn't satisfied. He grabbed my legs and pushed, forcing them higher until my joints popped. I couldn't hold back a groan. Does it hurt? He asked. What do you think? Just bear it. That's how they do it on the disc. I bit my lower lip and went silent. He finished the second round in about 10 minutes. His stamina was failing. He had to stop twice in the middle, wheezing like an old ox. I didn't move the entire time. I lay there like a corpse. Afterward, he lit another cigarette. This time he didn't talk. He stared at the ceiling with glassy eyes, like he was replaying what just happened. I sat up and touched my lower back. It ached so badly, I couldn't straighten up. I rubbed the sore muscle slowly, pressing my knuckles into the swollen spots, painful and relieving at the same time. "One more," I said. "I know." He stubbed his cigarette on the nightstand. He knocked over the bottle of lubricant. A puddle of it spread across the surface. He didn't bother wiping it up. The third position was the most ridiculous. "Get on top," he said, patting his own face with a serious look, like this was no joke. Just like on the disc, I sat still. My mind drifted to a lot of things. I remembered the first night with Wang Laosan. Back then I still knew how to blush. I still knew how to cry quietly when it was over. I remembered the first time with Zhao Dabiao. Back then I still cursed myself inside, called myself shameless. These men had been on top of me, one after another. Some fast, some slow. Some hurt, some didn't. But none of them had ever asked me to do something like this. Li the cripple, my voice was so quiet it was barely a whisper. "Can we skip this one?" "Why?" "I'm not used to it." He went quiet for a few seconds, then laughed. The smile was a bit forced, but his tone stayed polite enough. "Hongxia, we agreed on 3. Can't skip a single one. If you don't want this one, we can swap it for a different one. There's more positions on the disc." I closed my eyes. That afternoon at the mahjong table, my own words echoed back to me. 3 rounds. 130 each. "If you don't agree, I'll go to Wang Laosan." Those were my words. My price. My terms. I had no right to back out. "Fine." I opened my eyes. "This one." I stood up and walked over to him. He lay back, face up, eyes reflecting the dead light bulb on the ceiling. I looked at his face, flat nose, thick lips, that black mole at the corner of his mouth with 2 long hairs growing out of it. I took a deep breath and climbed on. Those few minutes were the hardest of my entire life. I kept my eyes shut. I couldn't see anything, but every sensation was magnified. I could feel the hot air from Li the cripple's nose, the roughness of his lips, and that wave of nausea churning inside me.
I held it all in.
My fingernails dug into my palms until they drew blood. Finally, he tapped my leg. "Done." I sprang off him like I'd been burned, flung the door open, and crouched in the yard, dry heaving. Nothing came up. My stomach was empty. The egg noodles from that morning and the sips of beer were long gone. But I couldn't stop, heave after heave, until tears and snot smeared across my face. Li the cripple followed me out and stood behind me, rubbing his hands awkwardly. "Hongxia, you okay?" I waved him off. Couldn't speak. I crouched there retching for a long time before it finally eased. I wiped my face with my sleeve and stood up. My legs were shaking. I leaned against the wall and waited for the dizziness to pass. "We square?" I asked. My voice was so hoarse it didn't sound like mine. "Square, square." He nodded fast and pulled 60 yuan from his pocket. "Here's the extra. Buy yourself some cigarettes." I looked at the money.
Took it.
Stuffed it in my pocket. I turned and walked out without a word. He was still standing in the yard. Moonlight lit up his face, and on it was a look of satisfaction, like a baby who'd just been fed. "Li the cripple," I said. Burn that disc." He blinked, opened his mouth to say something, but I was already gone. I walked fast on the night road, almost running. The moon was high now, flooding the path white like a layer of salt. I wanted to get home, get in the shower, scrub every smell off my body. But I knew some smells don't wash off. Just like I knew that tomorrow Liu Pingkui was coming home, and tonight I'd been in Li the cripple's bed, doing those things from the disc. I wanted to laugh. I wanted to cry. In the end, I did neither. I just walked faster, heading for that iron gate with the peeling paint. Liu Pingkui was coming home today. I didn't go play mahjong. For the first time in I don't know how long, I cleaned the house, swept the floor, wiped the table, changed the bed sheets. That stained pair of underwear stayed buried at the back of the closet. I washed myself twice with soap to get rid of Li the cripple's smell. I even walked to the village entrance and bought 2 pounds of pork and a bunch of chives. I was going to make dumplings. Liu Pingkui arrived while I was chopping the filling. The knife was loud. Thunk, 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 covering the sound of the gate opening. I didn't notice until a rough voice called out, "Hongxia," and my head snapped up. He was standing in the kitchen doorway. I barely recognized him. 3 months ago when he'd come home. He was thin and dark, but still looked like a person. The man in front of me now was skinny as a stick of firewood. Cheekbones jutting out sharp, eye sockets sunken deep, skin so yellow it looked like old newspaper pasted over bone. He wore a washed-out camo work jacket with frayed cuffs. His left hand held a beat-up duffel bag. His right hand gripped the doorframe, like he'd fall over without it. "How did you get this thin?" I froze, the cleaver hanging in the air. He tried to pull his lips into a smile, but it looked worse than crying. "It's nothing. Just my liver acting up. I'll rest and get better." I set the knife down and went to take his bag. It was light, almost nothing in it. A few changes of clothes, a pair of old rubber shoes, and a plastic bag with some steamed buns inside, hard as rocks. "This is what you ate on the road?" I asked. He didn't answer. He sat on the threshold and started untying his shoelaces. His fingers were stiff, the joints bent, and unable to straighten. It took him forever to get one shoe undone. I squatted down to help with the other one. When I pulled the lace, the whole sole nearly came off. The rubber had worn through. He'd patched it with a piece of bicycle inner tube, and that patch was almost worn through too. My nose burned suddenly. I pulled off his shoes, set them aside, and helped him into the front room. He dragged his right leg when he walked. His back wouldn't straighten. His whole body was bent like a bow. He sat down in a chair and let out a long breath, as if walking those few hundred meters from the village entrance had used up every drop of strength he had. "Let me get you some water." I went to the kitchen and brought back a warm cup. He took it with both hands, sipping slowly, like an old ox that had been thirsty for a very long time. I stood beside him watching, and I couldn't name what I felt. This man was my husband. I'd been married to him for 16 years. 16 years ago, he wasn't like this. He was young, strong, full of energy that never ran out. On our wedding night, he picked me up and spun me around the room 3 times. I got so dizzy I was laughing like a fool. He said, "Hongxia, I'm going to give you a good life." 16 years later, the good life never came, and he'd ground himself down to this. I turned around and went back to chopping the filling. The knife came down hard, thunk, 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 harder than before. He sat in the front room listening. He didn't say a word. That evening I made the dumplings, pork and chive filling. Liu Pingkui ate 12. I thought he'd eat more, but he put his chopsticks down after the 12th and said his stomach hurt. He couldn't eat anymore. I packed up the leftover dumplings, washed the dishes, boiled another pot of water, and had him take a bath. While he was washing, I sat in the front room smoking. The water splashed and ran. It sounded different from last night at Lee the Cripple's. Last night, it was Lee the Cripple in the shower. Tonight, it was my husband. Same sound.
Different man.
Something I couldn't name churned inside me. He came out wearing clean clothes, an old set of pajamas I'd dug out of the closet. They were 2 sizes too big now, hanging loose on his frame like a child wearing a grown-up's clothes. He walked to the bed and lay down slowly, face toward the ceiling, eyes closed. I lay down too. We were on the same bed, half a meter between us, like 2 strangers sharing a room. Silence. A long silence. "Hongxia," he suddenly spoke. While I was gone. "Have you been okay?" My fingers curled under the blanket. I stared at the ceiling, keeping my voice steady, steadier than it should have been.
"I'm fine."
Just boring being here alone. Liu Pingkui was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I'll be staying home from now on. No more factory work. The foreman said if I keep going, it'll kill me." I made a small sound. "Is the money at home enough?" he asked. "The 2,000 I sent back with Xiao Chen, did you get it?" "I got it." "Good." His voice was getting softer, like he was drifting off. "Hongxia, we need to be careful with money from now on. My condition. I need medicine. Medicine isn't cheap." I turned my head and looked at him. His eyes were closed, his eyelashes trembling slightly, like he was holding something back. His lips were cracked and peeling. The stubble on his chin had gone white, not the dignified gray of a mature man, but a sickly, ashen white. I wanted to say something. My lips moved. In the end, I said nothing. I rolled over, turning my back to him. Outside the window, Insects were chirping, one cry after another, grating on my nerves. For the next few days, I actually behaved myself. I didn't play mahjong. My phone buzzed, Li the cripple asking if I was coming to fill the fourth seat. I didn't reply. Wang Laosan called. I hung up. Zhao Dabiao didn't bother reaching out. Since that night in the alley, he barely looked at me at the mahjong table, as if nothing had ever happened between us. During the day, I cooked for Liu Pingkui, washed his clothes, and took him to the town clinic. The doctor said it was mid-stage liver cirrhosis. Long-term medication. No hard labor.
No alcohol.
No greasy food. I took the prescription to the pharmacy. 3 batches of medicine cost over 200 yuan, enough for 2 rounds of mahjong. Carrying the medicine home, a thought crept in. If I took that 200 to the table and got lucky, I could double it. The moment that thought appeared, it scared me. I crushed it out fast. When Liu Pingkui was home, I kept my phone on silent, hidden under my pillow. I was afraid he'd see the messages, even though he'd never once looked at my phone. That honest man. He'd worked away from home for 16 years, sent back 16 years of wages, and never once asked how the money was spent. He didn't know how much I'd lost at mahjong. He didn't know how I'd paid off those debts. But I knew this quiet life wouldn't last long. It wasn't his problem. It was mine. My hands itched. My heart itched worse. Not the kind of itch on your skin. It was in the cracks between my bones, running through my veins, an itch I couldn't reach or scratch. On the 4th day, I couldn't take it anymore. That afternoon, Liu Pingkui was napping. The medicine made him drowsy. Once he fell asleep, he'd be out for 2 or 3 hours. I sat in the doorway soaking up the sun, my phone buzzing nonstop in my pocket. I pulled it out. The mahjong group chat. Wang Laosan. Need a fourth this afternoon. Who's in? Li the cripple. I'm in. Zhao Dabiao. Me too. Wang Laosan. One more. Hongxia? Atway Hongxia. Li the cripple. Where's Hongxia been these days? Wang Laosan. Her husband's home. She's playing the good wife now, ha ha ha. I stared at those messages and pressed my lips together without thinking. I set the phone face down on my knee and looked at the crooked jujube tree in the yard. The wind shook the last few dried-out dates loose. They hit the ground one by one, tap, 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 like little stones landing on my heart. I glanced back inside. Liu Pingkui was lying on his side, breathing light and even. Deep asleep. I stood up, paced the yard twice, sat back down. Pulled out a cigarette and lit it. Inhaled deep. The smoke drifted through the autumn sunlight, thin and blue. I took out my phone and typed a line in the group. Can't today. I've got things to do. I sent it, shoved the phone back in my pocket, and went to the kitchen to boil water. When the water was ready, I filled the thermos, then took out Liu Pingkui's medicine and counted what was left. Enough for 3 more days. 3 days from now, I'd need to buy more. Another 200 and something. I leaned against the kitchen doorframe, looking at the pile of medicine bags on the counter, and did the math in my head. His medicine cost over 2,000 a month. The money he brought home plus what I had left, a little over 3,000 total. That meant we could last a month and a half at most. After that, I didn't dare think about it. 2 more days passed. 6 full days without touching a mahjong tile. My hands were desperate. At meals I'd hold my chopsticks and catch myself mimicking the motion of drawing a tile in my mind. At night my fingers would twitch on top of the blanket, rubbing against nothing, like feeling for a tile I hadn't flipped yet. I'd been through this before, but never this bad. In the past, I couldn't last 2 days without playing. Now it had been 6, and I felt like my hands were going to wither and die. That afternoon, Liu Pingkui said he wanted to sit in the sun by the village entrance. I helped him walk to the old pagoda tree. A few big rocks sat underneath it. He settled onto one, squinting into the sunlight. I sat with him for a while, but I couldn't keep still. My body felt like the seat was covered in nails. I'm going to the shop to buy cigarettes, I said, standing up. He nodded. I walked quickly toward the shop. A few people were gathered outside. Zhang Tsuehua was chatting with someone. When she saw me, her eyes flickered, and that half-smile appeared on her face. Hongxia, long time no see. Home taking care of the husband, her voice was pitched just right, not loud, not quiet. I grunted, bought a pack of Haidman, and turned to leave. Behind me she added, Hongxia, your Pingkui's illness. Must be costing a lot, huh? I stopped and looked back at her. She was smiling sweetly, like she cared. But I knew she didn't. Zhang Suihua was the village's biggest loudspeaker. Anything that reached her mouth spread to the whole village by sundown. Not that much. Just needs rest. I said it and walked away. When I got back to the pagoda tree, Liu Pingkui had fallen asleep sitting on the rock. His head had tipped to one side, mouth slightly open, breathing heavy. Looking at him, I suddenly thought he looked like an old man. A 60-year-old man, not someone barely past 40. I sat down beside him and pulled out my phone. New messages in the group. This afternoon at Wang Laosan's place. Still needed a fourth. Li the cripple had tagged me 3 times. The last one said, Hongxia, you scared of losing? Don't worry, Zhou Hardware is treating today. If you lose, it's on him. I stared at that message for a long time. I looked back at Liu Pingkui. Still asleep. No telling when he'd wake up. From here to Wang Laosan's place, it was less than 10 minutes on foot. If I moved fast, played 2 rounds, and came back, he might still be sleeping. I stood up, then squatted back down. Squatted down, then stood up again. Back and forth, over and over, like a chicken locked in a cage, wanting out but afraid to go. Finally, I took a deep breath, grabbed my phone, and typed 2 words in the group. What time? Li the cripple replied instantly. 12:30. I checked the time. 12:10. I stood up, brushed the dust off my pants, and looked one more time at Liu Pingkui sleeping in the sun. The autumn light fell on his waxy yellow face. No color in it at all, like a sheet of paper. I'm going to buy a few things. I'll be right back, I whispered, even though he couldn't hear me. Then I turned and walked fast toward Wang Laosan's place. When I got there, the table was already set up. Zhou Hardware sat across from the door with a thick stack of colorful bills in front of him, 700 or 800 at least. He was wearing a dark blue polo with the collar popped, a gold chain around his neck as thick as a pinky finger, swinging and flashing in the light. When he saw me walk in, his fleshy face bunched into a smile, eyes squinting behind his gold-rimmed glasses. Sister Hongxia, finally. We've been waiting. He patted the chair beside him. Sit here. Good feng shui. I ignored him, pulled a chair from the opposite side, and sat down. Took off my straw hat, set it on the table corner, lit a cigarette, and scanned the table. Wang Laosan to my left. Li the cripple to my right. Zhou Hardware across from me. Zhao Dabiao wasn't there. Word was he'd gone help build a house in the next village. How much are we playing for? I asked. Same as always, 5 per multiplier. Wang Laosan stacked tiles while he talked. Hongxia, your Pingkui's home. He lets you out to play. I blew out smoke. He's sleeping. I'm just playing a couple rounds, then heading back. Zhou Hardware chuckled. Sister Hongxia, so devoted, out playing mahjong but still thinking about home. Not like my wife. I'm gone all day, and she won't even call. Li the cripple jumped in. Your wife's probably hoping you don't come back, so she can be with a neighbor. Get out of here. Zhou Hardware waved him off with a laugh, then turned back to me. His eyes lingered on my face for a second, then slid down to my hands. Sister Hongxia, I can tell your luck's going to be great today. Your forehead is glowing. I didn't respond. Cigarette between my lips. I reached for my tiles. First round, I won 36. My chest loosened a little. 6 days away from the table, and my luck hadn't wandered too far. I folded the bills neatly and tucked them in my pocket. The corner of my mouth lifted without me meaning it to. Second round, Zhou Hardware self-drew. 16 from each of us. I tossed the money over. When he took it, his fingers brushed across my palm. My hand jerked back like it had been scalded. I looked up at him. He was counting his money, face perfectly calm, not a single wrinkle in his smile out of place. Third round, I was 1 tile from winning, waiting on a 2, 5, or 8 of characters for split weight. I threw out a north wind. Zhou Hardware claimed it, then discarded a 5 of bamboo. I was about to call my win when Wang Laosan beat me to it. 1, he flipped his tiles, pinching the 5 of bamboo. My winning hand, stolen. I squeezed the 8 of characters in my grip until it creaked. Fast hands win. Hongxia, Wang Laosan grinned. Be quicker next time. Fourth round, I dealt straight into Zhou Hardware's hand. 7 pairs, triple multiplier, 96 yuan. All from me. I dug out the money and threw it across. The 36 I'd won earlier was gone. I was 60 in the hole. I felt the envelope in my pocket. Inside was a little over 100 I'd taken from Liu Pingkui's 2,000. I hesitated, then pulled out a 100 yuan note and broke it. 5th round, lost 32. 6th round, lost 48. 7th round, lost 64. My face got darker with every hand. Cigarettes burned one after another. The ashtray overflowed with butts. The bills in front of me drained away like water, and I couldn't dam the flow. Li the cripple won 2 hands and was grinning ear to ear. Wang Laosan broke even, sitting steady. Zhou Hardware won the most. His pile was pushing close to 1,000. Sister Hongxia, he said while shuffling tiles, your luck's really off today. Wanna switch seats? No, I shoved the tiles into the machine.
My voice was hard.
2 more rounds. I added it up, down 220. My pockets were nearly empty. One last 50 yuan note. 1 more round, I said. This was my last chance. The tiles came up. I looked at my hand and my heart sank halfway to the floor. 3 win tiles, 2 honor tiles, and the rest were scattered 1s and 9s. Couldn't form a single pair. I bit down on my cigarette and threw tiles out one by one. Every card that left my hand felt like it drew blood. Midway through the round, I had 4 tiles left: a red dragon, a green dragon, a white dragon, and a 1 of characters. All loose. Nothing worth keeping. I agonized, then finally threw the 1 of characters. 1. Zhou Hardware shoved his tiles forward, his laugh filling the entire room. 13 orphans. Sister Hongxia, that 1 of characters perfect. That's exactly what I was waiting for. I leaned over to look. Sure enough, 13 orphans. My 1 of characters was his final piece. The color drained from my face. I couldn't even calculate how many multipliers that was. I just knew it was a lot. Wang Laosan leaned in and did the math, then sucked air through his teeth. 13 orphans, 88 multipliers. 5 yuan each, that's 440. Hongxia, you dealt the winning tile. It's all on you, for 140, plus the 220 from before. 660 total. I sat in my chair, didn't move. My hands were shaking. Not from fear, from rage. I looked at Zhou Hardware. He smiled back at me, and behind those gold-rimmed glasses his eyes held a glow I knew too well. It wasn't the glow of a player who'd won some money. It was the glow of a hunter watching his prey fall into the trap. Sister Hongxia, he said slow and easy, if you're a little short right now, no rush. Pay me back. Slowly. The way he said slowly. The tone was identical to the way Wang Laosan had once said, what are you putting up as collateral? I understood everything now. This whole game had been aimed at me from the start. Zhou Hardware didn't come to play mahjong. He came to fish. He set a trap on purpose. Let me lose, let me pile up debt, then wait for me to say those words. Those words I'd said so many times before. To Wang Laosan, to Li the cripple, to Zhao Dabiao, to Zhang Laowu. But today, I didn't want to say them. 660. I slapped my last 50 on the table. I owe you 610. I'll pay you next month. I stood up and grabbed my straw hat to leave. Zhou Hardware blocked me with his arm. Sister Hongxia, he said with a smile, voice not loud but heavy, next month is too far out. You know how it is, I'm a businessman, cash has to keep moving. 610 isn't a lot, but drag it a month and the interest adds up. How much interest? Standard rate 3% a month. He held up 3 fingers. 610, 1 month's interest is 1830. 3 months, that's 55. I looked at him coldly. What do you want? He stood up and walked over to me. He wasn't tall, but with that belly he stood in front of me like a wall of flesh. He looked down at me, voice dropping so low only I could hear. Sister Hongxia, I've heard about your reputation in the village. 300 a time. Am I right? My face went hot. Wang Laosan told you. Doesn't matter who told me. He smiled. What matters is, here's my offer. 610, 3 rounds, 200 each. The extra 10, consider it my treat for cigarettes. 3 rounds. Same deal as Li the cripple, except Li the cripple at least threw in 60 extra. Zhou Hardware was squeezing even that last 10. No, I turned to leave. He grabbed my arm. Hard. I struggled twice and couldn't break free. Wang Laosan and Li the cripple sat at the mahjong table. One looking down shuffling tiles, one staring up at the ceiling. Neither of them glanced our way. Let go, I said, my voice tight. Sister Hongxia, his smile didn't change, but his eyes did. They went ice cold. You owe me 610. Do I have a receipt?
No.
You say you owe me 610. I say you owe me 1100. What proof do you have? My heart dropped like a stone. I understood now. Zhou Hardware never planned to let me pay with money. He set this trap, so I'd owe him. The more the better. Until I couldn't pay. Until I had nowhere to go. If you walk out today, he let go of my arm, stepped back, and brushed invisible dust off his polo shirt. Tomorrow I go to your house and find your husband. Liver cirrhosis, right? Can't get angry, can't get worked up, can't handle stress. What do you think happens if I stand outside your gate and start yelling? Think he can handle that? My blood froze. I stood there.
My straw hat fell to the ground.
I didn't pick it up. I looked at him. He looked at me. Wang Laosan and Li the cripple had slipped out at some point. It was just the two of us in the room. The TV was still on. That same war drama. Gunshots popping away, like a battle that would never end. Tonight, my voice was so hoarse I could barely hear myself. Tonight, he smiled, and this time it was a real smile, satisfied, complete. My place. 8 o'clock. I'll text you the address. I bent down, picked up my hat, and walked out. The sun had shifted west. Autumn dusk comes early. The sky was already turning orange at the edges. I walked home slowly, so slowly, like stepping on cotton. My head hummed. I was thinking about everything and nothing at the same time. When I reached the village entrance, I saw a figure in the distance under the old pagoda tree. Liu Pingkui, still sitting on that same rock, in the exact same position I'd left him in, as if he'd never moved at all. The setting sun fell on him and pulled his shadow out long, so long it nearly reached my feet. I stopped in front of him and looked at his face. He was awake, eyes open, staring out at the cornfield in the distance. I didn't know what he was looking at. Hongxia, he said without turning his head. You were gone a long time. My mouth opened. I wanted to say something. Went to the shop for cigarettes. Sat at Zhang Suiwa's for a bit. Took a walk around the village. These excuses came to me easier than breathing. But I didn't say any of them. I sat down next to him, pulled out my pack of Haidman, took one out, and lit it. The smoke drifted through the sunset like a thin veil, separating the two of us. Pingkui, I said suddenly. Have you ever regretted it? He turned his head slowly and looked at me. His eyes were cloudy and yellowish, the whites shot through with red veins, but his gaze was calm, calmer than a dying man's should be. Regretted what? I looked down at my hands. These hands had touched countless mahjong tiles that afternoon. Tonight they would have to touch Zhou Hardware's body. I suddenly felt like these hands were filthy. So filthy, I wanted to take a knife and chop them off. Regretted marrying me, I said.
He was quiet for a long time.
The wind blew. The corn rustled. A dog barked once in the distance, then stopped. An autumn evening is so quiet you can hear your own heartbeat. No regrets, he said. My tears came out of nowhere. I thought I'd cried myself dry a long time ago. But right then they burst out like a dam breaking. I couldn't hold them back. I wiped with the back of my hand. The more I wiped, the more came, smearing my whole face. Liu Pingkui watched me cry, but didn't reach out to comfort me. Maybe he wanted to, but he was too weak. Even raising his hand felt like too much. He just looked at me, and the calm in his eyes made it worse. I wished he would yell at me, hit me, demand to know why I went to play mahjong that afternoon, why I lost so much money, why I could never control myself. But he didn't. He just said, no regrets, then closed his eyes and leaned against the pagoda tree, as if he'd fallen asleep again. I cried for a while, then helped him up and walked him home. I made a simple dinner. He had no appetite, soaked a bite of rice in hot water, ate a few mouthfuls of vegetables, and went back to bed. I'd just finished washing the pots and bowls when my phone buzzed in my pocket. Zhou Hardware. An address. Sister Hongxia. Qingxi Village. 3rd row. The yard with the red iron gate. Don't go to the wrong one. I memorized the address and deleted the message immediately. I put the phone back in my pocket and went to check if Liu Pingkui was asleep.
He was.
Mouth open, breathing so light it was barely there, like a dying man who could stop at any moment. I walked to Qingxi Village under the moonlight. It was 5 minutes to 8 when I arrived. Qingxi was bigger than our village, Liu Family Hollow. The houses were lined up neatly, new 2-story buildings, all built in the last few years. Zhou Hardware's place was in the 3rd row at the back. Big red iron gate with a white bulb hanging above it, lighting up the entrance bright as day. A silver minivan was parked out front with Zhou Hardware Building Materials painted on the side in red letters. I stood at the gate and finished my last cigarette. I flicked the butt away, watched it spark against the cement, then reached out and pressed the doorbell. 3 rings. No answer. I pressed again. This time I heard footsteps, slippers slapping on polished stone. The small door in the gate opened, and Zhou Hardware leaned out, eyes squinting behind his gold-rimmed glasses. You came, he smiled and swung the door wide. Come in. I stepped inside. The yard was small, paved with polished stone, clean, nothing like the cigarette butts and peanut shells at Wang Laosan's place. A sweet osmanthus tree grew in the corner, blooming in season, its sugary fragrance filling the whole yard. The front room door was wide open, the lights painfully bright. A variety show was playing on the TV, bursts of laughter rolling out in waves. I stood in the yard and didn't go further. Where's your wife? I asked. At her mother's. He didn't even blink when he said it. I looked at him, didn't ask more, and followed him inside. His front room was nothing like Wang Laosan's. A different world entirely. Real leather sofa, marble coffee table, a cross-stitch hanging on the wall that read, "Harmony brings prosperity." A fruit platter sat on the coffee table, apples, tangerines, sunflower seeds. I glanced at it and thought, Zhou Hardware really does have money. Fruit like that costs plenty at the town market. Sit. He pointed at the sofa. I sat, but only on the edge, back straight. I reached for my cigarettes and found the pack empty. I crushed it and tossed it in the trash can under the coffee table. Zhou Hardware opened a drawer, pulled out a pack of Chumwa cigarettes, unwrapped it, and offered me one. I took it. Chumwa. I'd only ever seen other people smoke these at the mahjong table. Never had one myself. He brought out a lighter and leaned in to light it for me. When the flame jumped up, his fingers brushed mine. I didn't pull away. I inhaled deep. Chumwa was much softer than Haidman. Didn't scratch the throat. But it didn't have that harsh bite either. Sister Hongxia. He sat down across from me, legs crossed. Have some tea first. No rush. There was a tea set on the coffee table. He went through the whole routine like an expert, rinsing the cups, steeping the leaves, pouring. Every motion smooth and practiced. He slid a small cup toward me. I picked it up and drank. It burned my mouth. I couldn't taste a thing. I set the cup down and got straight to it. 3 rounds. 6-10. When it's done, I leave. He laughed, picked up his own cup and sipped slowly, then set it down and sank back into the sofa, fingers laced over his belly. Sister Hongxia, he said, you're always in such a hurry. I like to take my time. I'm not like Wang Laosan, rushing through in 3 minutes. Where's the fun in that? I didn't respond. He went on. I heard that at Li the Cripple's place you did 3 rounds and even tried those positions from the disc. My expression shifted. Nothing happens in your village that I don't know about. He smiled, a gleam behind his glasses. But don't worry. I'm not into that cheap stuff. Those tricks are beneath me. He stood up and walked over, sitting down right next to me on the sofa. The cushion was soft. When he dropped his weight into it, I slid toward him. He didn't touch me. Just sat close. Close enough that I could smell his cologne. My request is simple, he said, voice level. Tonight you do what I say. Whatever I tell you, you do it. 3 rounds, not 1 less. When it's over, 610, wiped clean. After that you're still my mahjong buddy. I won't bother you again. I was quiet for a few seconds. Then I nodded. Fine. He stood up and reached out his hand. I thought he was going to pull me up, but he just patted my shoulder and said something that made no sense to me. Hold on. Let me go tell my wife first. My head snapped up. Your wife? You said she was at her mother's. He smiled. That smile had something in it that made my whole body go cold. He walked to the staircase and called up. Xiulan, come down. Our guest is here. Footsteps on the stairs. My brain exploded. A woman came down. Around 40. Round face, a little heavy, wearing a dark red house dress. Hair tied back loosely.
No makeup.
As she walked down the steps, her expression was perfectly calm. Calm like a pond with no ripple in it. She looked at me for 2 seconds, then looked away, like she was glancing at a piece of furniture. Xiulan, Zhou Hardware walked over and put his arm around her shoulder, then turned to me. My wife, Zhang Xiulan. I stood up. My lips moved, but nothing came out. Zhang Xiulan sat down on the sofa and picked up an apple from the coffee table. She started peeling it with a fruit knife. Her hand was steady. The peel came off thin and long, spiraling down in one unbroken strip, like a red-skinned snake. Sister Hongxia, Zhou Hardware sat back down and pushed me back into my seat. Don't be nervous. I talked it over with my wife. She agreed. My brain had completely stopped working. Agreed? Agreed to what? Zhang Xiulan finished peeling the apple, cut it into small pieces, arranged them on the plate, and stuck toothpicks in them. She handed one piece to Zhou Hardware first, then one to me, then took one for herself and chewed slowly. Her eyes never once looked at me. The thing about Xiulan, Zhou Hardware said between bites of apple, is that she's great in every way, except she's too dull. In bed she's like a log, no feeling at all. I've been wanting to find a sister to keep her company. Teach her a few things, show her how it's done. The piece of apple fell from my hand and hit the floor. I finally understood what Zhou Hardware wanted. No, I stood up, my voice shaking. You told me 3 rounds.
With you.
You never said anything about your wife being part of it. His smile didn't change, but his eyes went cold. Sister Hongxia, he said, the debt is between you and me. Creditor and debtor. My wife has nothing to do with it. You owe me 610, 3 rounds, 200 each. The extra 10 is for cigarettes. That's what we agreed on, right? I said nothing. Now, Zhou Hardware stood up and walked toward me. As your creditor, I'm asking you to complete these 3 rounds at my house. Whether my wife is here or not. That's my business. You don't get a say. I wanted to step back, but the sofa was behind me. Nowhere to go. Zhang Xiulan was still eating her apple. Crunch, crunch, crisp and loud. She finally looked up at me. That look had no cruelty in it, no kindness either. Just something I couldn't name, like surrender or numbness. Sister Hongxia. His voice softened again, soft like a knife wrapped in silk. Don't be scared. Xiulan is just going to watch.
She won't do anything.
If you cooperate 3 rounds, debt cleared. You go your way, I go mine. Nobody owes anybody. He paused, voice dropping even lower. If you don't cooperate, I'll drive you back to Liu Family Hollow right now. And on the way, I'll let Liu Pingkui know just how talented his wife has been. I closed my eyes. I pictured Liu Pingkui leaning against the pagoda tree, thin as paper. One gust of wind could knock him over. He couldn't get angry, couldn't get worked up, couldn't handle shock. If Zhou Hardware actually did what he said, Pingkui might not make it through the night. Fine. I opened my eyes. My voice had no rise or fall left in it. Tell me what to do. Zhou Hardware smiled with satisfaction, clapped his hands, and turned to Zhang Xiulan. Xiulan, go turn on the bedroom light. Zhang Xiulan set down her apple, stood up, and walked slowly upstairs. Her back was wide, her waist thick. She moved like a cow plodding along. At the bend in the staircase, she stopped and looked back at me. In that look, I saw something. It was pity. Zhang Xiulan pitied me. I didn't know whether to find that funny or heartbreaking. Zhou Hardware put his arm around my shoulder and guided me upstairs. The staircase was narrow. Walking side by side, we were squeezed together, my shoulder pressed against his chest. I could feel his heart pounding fast. He wasn't nervous. He was excited. The master bedroom was at the far end of the second floor.
Door open.
The light was already on, a warm yellow ceiling lamp, soft glow, everything in the room coated in a hazy tint. A king-size bed with white sheets. For pillows, a couple of magazines and a glass of water on the nightstand. Zhang Xiulan sat on the edge of the bed, hands on her knees, sitting perfectly straight, like a schoolgirl waiting for class to start. I stood in the doorway.
Didn't go in.
Zhou Hardware pushed me from behind, into the room, and shut the door. The lock clicked, a small sound, but in the quiet room it was sharp and clear. Sister Hongxia, he pointed at the bed. You first. Take your clothes off. I didn't move. Zhang Xiulan stared down at her own feet. She was wearing gray cotton slippers with a rabbit pattern on them, washed so many times the rabbit's eyes had faded away. I looked at her. She looked at her slippers. Two women under warm yellow light. A big bed between us. Zhou Hardware waited. When I still didn't move, the smile finally slipped from his face. He walked up to me and reached for the buttons on my blouse. I blocked his hand. He brushed it aside and kept going. First button.
Second. Third.
I stood there. Didn't move. My blouse slid to the floor. I stood under the light in the clean underwear I'd put on earlier. The pale skin below my collarbone caught the warm glow. His eyes stuck to me like flies, and he let out a low, satisfied sigh. Then he turned to Zhang Xiulan.
Xiulan.
Come here. She stood, walked over, and stopped in front of him.
She didn't look at me.
I didn't look at her. Two women standing side by side, like two products placed next to each other on a shelf. Zhou Hardware looked left, then right, and laughed. Tonight, he said slowly, I want both of you to serve me together. I stood in that warm light and felt every drop of blood in my body freeze. I looked at Zhang Xiulan. Her head was bowed, her hands twisted together, knuckles squeezed white. This woman hadn't spoken a single complete sentence the entire time, like a body with the soul pulled out, just waiting for Zhou Hardware's commands to make it move. Xiulan, his voice carried a weight that allowed no argument. Help Sister Hongxia take off her underwear. She raised her head and glanced at me. The look was so brief I couldn't catch any emotion in it. She reached out. When her fingers touched my strap, they trembled slightly. I didn't move. I let her slide the straps off my shoulders. My body was exposed inch by inch under the light. Collarbones. Chest. Stomach. My belly was a little loose from having a child, but my waist still had its shape. Compared to most women my age in the village, I had a decent figure. Zhou Hardware's gaze swept over me like a paintbrush, back and forth, several times, finally settling on one spot. A low sound of approval rumbled from his throat. Sister Hongxia, your body is much better than Xiulan's. He said it the way someone talks about merchandise. Zhang Xiulan's hand paused for a moment, then resumed. She pulled my underwear all the way off, held it in her hands, unsure where to put it, then folded it neatly and set it on the nightstand. Xiulan, you too. Take yours off. His voice was calm, like he was giving a household chore instruction. She straightened up and started unbuttoning her house dress. Her movements were slow, not from hesitation, but clumsiness. Her fingers were thick and stubby, nails trimmed blunt, traces of grease still on them from something she hadn't fully washed off. 3 buttons undone, the dress fell open, showing a cotton undershirt washed nearly white. I couldn't help glancing at her. Zhang Xiulan's body was nothing like mine. Half a head shorter, round all over, not a thin spot anywhere. Layers of flesh on her stomach, like a lump of dough that hadn't been kneaded properly. Her skin wasn't fair either, yellowish, dull. On her arms were a few burned scars. I didn't know when she'd gotten them. After her clothes were off, she dropped her head again, arms hanging at her sides, like a prisoner waiting to be sentenced. Zhou Hardware pulled something from the nightstand drawer. I looked. A red rope, thick as a finger, with slip knots tied at both ends. I didn't know what he was planning, but a wave of dread hit me hard. Xiulan, lie on the bed. He wound the rope around his hand twice. Zhang Xiulan obeyed. She lay face up, limbs spread out, like a turtle flipped on its back. Her eyes fixed on the ceiling. Every trace of expression had drained from her face, like a sheet of paper wiped clean. Zhou Hardware turned to me and held out the rope. Sister Hongxia, tie Xiulan's hands to the headboard. I didn't take it. Tie them, his voice dropped. Just 3 words. My hands were shaking when I took the rope. It was cotton, soft to the touch, but it felt heavy in my grip, like a red snake. I went to Zhang Xiulan's side, took her left wrist, wrapped the rope twice around it, and tied a knot. The other end I looped around the iron rail of the headboard and pulled tight. Then the right hand. Same movements, same knot. Her arms were spread and fixed to the headboard. She didn't struggle, didn't resist. Her expression didn't change at all. Her eyes stayed locked on the ceiling, the warm yellow light of the lamp reflected in her pupils. When I finished, I sat beside her, just staring. 2 women, one tied down, one sitting still, on that king-size bed, like a painting with no name. Zhou Hardware nodded with approval and started taking off his clothes. His body was even more bloated than I'd imagined. He clearly had no shame about it. He stood at the foot of the bed, hands on his hips, like a wild boar surveying its territory. Sister Hongxia, he said, move closer to Xiulan. I closed my eyes. I didn't move. I'll count to 3. His voice was unhurried, like counting multipliers at the mahjong table. 1. I opened my eyes. I looked at Zhang Xiulan. She looked back at me. This time her gaze didn't turn away. 2 women's eyes met in the warm light, like 2 dried-up rivers finally flowing into the same place. Her lips moved. 2 words. No sound. But I understood. She said, "Come on." I lowered myself slowly, closer to her. We were very near each other now. One body slightly cool, one slightly warm. One skin smooth, one rough. Her skin was coarse like sandpaper. The lines on her body looked like dried riverbeds. Close to her, I could hear her heartbeat, slow and heavy, 1 beat at a time, like someone hitting an old drum. Zhou Hardware moved to the other side. The light in the room was dim. The air felt thick and suffocating. His breathing grew heavier, stirring up a wave of hot air. I buried my face in the curve of Zhang Xiulan's neck. She didn't smell like perfume or anything special, just laundry soap and a faint trace of cooking oil. It was a homey smell, a smell I hadn't known in a very long time. Her hand, the one tied to the headboard, suddenly shifted. Her fingers reached out, searching, and brushed against the back of my hand. Then, slowly, 1 finger at a time, she laced her fingers through mine and held on. I squeezed back. I held her hand tight. 2 women's hands clasped together under the ropes, fingers interlocked, like 2 people lost at sea grabbing the same piece of driftwood. Zhou Hardware made his noises. He was rougher than Wang Laosan, more persistent than Li the Cripple, more silent than Zhao Dabiao. His panting was heavy, like a donkey turning a millstone, round and round, tireless. I kept my eyes closed. All my attention went to that one hand, the hand Zhang Xiulan was holding. Her hand was rough but warm. The warmth traveled from my fingertips up through me, bit by bit, like a small but steady flame. Time crawled. I didn't know how long it lasted. Maybe 10 minutes. Maybe 20. Maybe longer. Zhou Hardware shifted positions several times, each change dragging things out further. Zhang Xiulan stayed fixed in place the whole time, part spectator, part participant. Her fingers never let go of mine. Not once. Finally, he let out a long, satisfied groan and collapsed heavily to one side. The mattress shook hard under his weight. He gasped for air, sweat rolling down his forehead, his glasses completely fogged. I moved away from Zhang Xiulan and lay on the far side. My body felt like it had been taken apart. Every joint ached. I let go of her hand. It dropped slowly. The rope had dug a deep red line into her wrist. Nobody spoke. The only sounds in the room were Zhou Hardware's panting and the tick of the clock on the wall. After a few minutes, he rolled over, sat up, grabbed a cigarette from the nightstand, and lit it. He took 2 drags and passed it to me. I took it, inhaled deep. The smoke turned a circle in my chest and came out as a long, heavy sigh. Sister Hongxia, his voice was hoarse, lazy with exhaustion. You surprised me. Better than I expected. I didn't speak. We'll stop here for tonight. He stood up and started getting dressed.
2 more rounds left.
I'll come find you in a couple days. I shot upright. What did you say? We agreed 3 rounds, all settled tonight. He turned and looked at me. He smiled. That same smile as before, warm, polite, like an easygoing businessman. Did I say that? He tilted his head. What I said was, tonight you do what I say. Whatever I tell you, you do it. 3 rounds, not 1 less. I never said all 3 would happen tonight, did I? The blood rushed straight to the top of my skull. You played me. How would I play you? Zhao Hardware pulled on his pants, buckled his belt, and spoke like he had all the time in the world. I'm a man of my word. 3 rounds, not 1 less. But not tonight. Tonight was a warm-up. The other 2, we'll get to them later. What's the rush? My whole body was shaking. I couldn't tell if it was from anger or cold. I grabbed the blanket, wrapped it around myself, jumped off the bed, and went looking for my clothes. Blouse, underwear, pants. I put them back on piece by piece, fingers trembling so hard I couldn't fasten the buttons. Zhang Xiaolan was still lying on the bed, hands tied to the headboard, motionless. Her eyes followed me as I moved. Her lips shifted again, but this time I couldn't make out what she said. I got dressed and walked to the door. I looked back. Zhao Hardware sat on the edge of the bed, legs crossed, smoking, watching me with that same easy smile. His gold chain swayed under the light, the glare stabbing my eyes. Sister Hongxia, he blew out smoke. Go home and rest. I'll call you in a couple days. I yanked the door open and ran. Down the stairs, across the yard, through that red iron gate, straight into the darkness. The moon had hidden behind clouds. The road through Qingxi village was pitch black. I couldn't see my hand in front of my face. I stumbled as I ran, nearly fell several times, but I didn't dare stop. If I stopped, I'd either start crying or turn around and strangle Zhao Hardware. I ran out of Qingxi village, onto the dirt road back to Liu Family Hollow, all the way to the cornfield before I finally stopped. I bent over, hands on my knees, gulping air like a fish thrown on land. The moon broke through the clouds, and everything turned bright. I squatted by the road and buried my face in my knees. I didn't cry. I just crouched there, like a weed ripped out by the roots, not knowing where to plant itself. After a long time I stood and kept walking toward home. I passed Wang Laosan's house. The lights were still on inside, mahjong tiles clacking, men and women laughing. I walked faster. At home, I felt my way into the dark bedroom. Liu Pingkui was lying in bed facing the wall, breathing lightly. I stood by the bed for a while, then took off my clothes and changed into pajamas. I climbed in and lay with my back to his. In the dark, my eyes stayed open, staring at the window. Moonlight leaked through the curtain gap and drew a thin white line on the floor. That line was so thin it looked like a string about to snap. I closed my eyes. Zhao Hardware's voice was still ringing in my ears. 2 more rounds. I'll come find you in a couple days. And the image of Zhang Xiaolan tied to the headboard, her fingers threading into mine, holding my hand. The warmth of that hand still lingered on my fingertips. But I knew it would fade soon. Just like my life. Gone cold all the way through. I was sick for 3 days. A cold. That night, after running out of Zhao Hardware's house, I was drenched in sweat. The night wind hit me, and by the next morning I had a fever. 38.6. Burning hot, every bone aching like someone had poured chilly water into my joints. I lay in bed all day, without getting up. Liu Pingkui dragged his sick body to the kitchen and boiled a pot of ginger soup. When he carried it to my bedside, his hands shook so badly half the bowl spilled. I drank 2 sips. The ginger burned and tears poured down my face. I couldn't tell if it was the ginger or something else. For 3 days the phone buzzed again and again. I didn't look, didn't answer. I shoved it under my pillow, and every vibration hit the back of my skull like a hammer, one thud after another, pounding my headache worse. I knew who was messaging. Zhou Hardware, Li the Cripple, Wang Laosan. They came in shifts, like they'd planned it, bombing my phone one after another. Li the Cripple asked when I was coming to play. Wang Laosan asked if I was feeling better. Zhou Hardware didn't ask anything. He just sent one line. Sister Hongxia, don't forget, 2 more rounds. I read that message 3 times, deleted it, and flipped the phone face down on the nightstand, like turning over a dead body. On the 3rd afternoon, the fever broke. I crawled out of bed, took a bath, and changed into clean clothes. The woman in the mirror had lost weight. Cheekbones sticking out, eye sockets hollow, lips cracked and peeling, like a leaf dried to a crisp by the sun. I put on lip balm twice, then slapped on a thick layer of snow cream and rubbed until my face turned red. When I walked out of the bedroom, Liu Pingkui was sitting in the front room drinking his medicine. The broth was black. Its bitterness filled the whole house. He sipped slowly, pausing after each mouthful like he was swallowing something that refused to go down. He saw me come out and set the bowl down. "Feeling better?" he asked. "Much better." I sat across from him and looked at him. 3 days without really looking at him, and he seemed thinner again. Cheekbones higher, eye sockets deeper, the skin on his neck hanging loose, like a deflated ball. His hand trembled as he held the medicine bowl. The dark liquid sloshed back and forth, nearly spilling again. I reached over and took the bowl, fed it to him. He froze for a second, but didn't refuse. He drank the rest in one go, face twisting from the bitterness. I fished a candy from my pocket, unwrapped it, and popped it in his mouth. A fruit drop. The hard kind, 5 for 50 cents. He sucked on it, his cheek bulging with a small lump, and looked at me. Something flickered in his cloudy eyes, a tiny bit of light.
Hongxia, he said.
You haven't gone to play mahjong these past days. My hand paused. Then I set the bowl on the table, voice flat. No. Good. He lowered his head and slowly chewed the candy.
Play less.
Save money. My medicine. Can't be stopped. I made a small sound. I stood up and went to cook. The oil bottle on the counter was nearly empty. The rice jar was less than half full. I dug through the drawer, found 20 yuan, and headed for the village shop to buy oil and salt. At the door, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out. Zhou Hardware. Sister Hongxia, Wang Laosan's place needs a 4th this afternoon. Coming? If not, I'll pick you up tonight and we'll finish those last 2 rounds. I stared at the message, my finger hovering over the screen. I thought about the red rope. Zhang Xiulan tied to the headboard. That warm yellow ceiling light. The suffocating weight of Zhou Hardware pressing against my back. My stomach heaved. I bent over and dry heaved twice. Nothing came up. I shoved the phone back in my pocket and went to the shop. Zhang Cuihua was sunning herself at the door. When she saw me, her eyes lit up like a cat catching a whiff of fish. Hongxia, I heard you were sick, her voice dripped with fake concern. Just a cold. I'm fine. I grabbed oil, salt, and a pack of Haidman, then handed over 20 yuan. While making change, she lowered her voice. Hongxia, let me tell you something. A few nights ago, someone saw you walking back from Qingxi village. Late at night. What were you doing in Qingxi village? My hand froze for a second, but I kept my face blank. Visiting relatives. Relatives? She smiled, the kind of smile with a blade hidden in it. Hongxia, don't lie to me. You don't have any relatives in Qingxi village. Your family isn't even from around here. I took the change, bagged my things, and turned to leave. Behind me, she called out. Hongxia, I'm saying this for your own good. Your Pingkui's body can't take any more trouble. I didn't look back. I walked home, put the oil and salt away, and started cooking. Rinsed the rice, washed the vegetables, sliced the pork. The meat was a small piece of belly pork that Liu Pingkui had someone buy in town yesterday. 15 yuan. I cut it thin and tossed it in the wok. The fat sizzled, and the smell filled the whole kitchen. Liu Pingkui followed the scent to the kitchen doorway and stood there watching me cook. I glanced back at him, almost said something, but in the end said nothing. At dinner he ate less than half a bowl of rice, picked out a few slices of meat, and set his chopsticks down. Said his stomach hurt. Couldn't eat more. I finished the leftovers, washed the dishes, and prepared his medicine for tomorrow. When everything was done, I sat on the front step and lit a cigarette. Autumn evenings come early now. Past 5, and the sky was already darkening. The jujube tree in the yard was bare. Fallen leaves scattered everywhere, blown around by the wind. I watched those dead leaves and smoked one cigarette after another, the glowing tips flickering in the dusk like village lights in the distance. My phone buzzed.
Not Zhou Hardware this time.
Li the cripple. Hongxia, come over tonight. Last time you were amazing. Let's do it again. I'll pay cash this time. Not debt, real money. I read the message twice and laughed. A bitter laugh, bitter as Liu Pingkui's medicine. I remembered the first time I went to bed with Li the cripple. He was clumsy, couldn't even undo a button. Now he'd learned to watch discs, learned to time himself with a watch, learned to haggle, learned to make offers on his own. He'd become a shrewd customer, and I was his supply. I flicked the cigarette away, stood up, and brushed off my pants. Inside, Liu Pingkui was already lying down, facing the wall, breathing softly. I stood by the bed watching him for a while, then turned, walked out of the bedroom, and pulled the door shut gently behind me. I sat in the front room, picked up my phone, and sent Zhou Hardware a message. What time tonight? He replied instantly. 8. My place again. Shulon's not here tonight. Don't worry. I stared at those 4 words. Shulon's not here. A strange feeling welled up that I couldn't name. Relief or more tension. I wasn't sure. No Shulon meant it would be just me and Zhou Hardware. No rough, warm hand holding mine. No silent woman tied to the headboard, enduring alongside me. Tonight I'd be alone. I stood up and went to boil water for a bath. When the kettle screamed, steam poured from the spout and hung in the dim kitchen like fog that wouldn't clear. I stood inside that fog, looking at my shadow on the window glass, blurry, shapeless, like a different person. I washed, changed clothes, and walked out the gate. No moon yet. The sky had gone completely black. I walked toward Qingxi village, slow as a prisoner walking to the execution ground. The corn on both sides of the road had been harvested. Nothing left but stubble, rustling dry in the night wind. When I reached the edge of Qingxi village, I could see the white bulb above that red iron gate in the distance, painfully bright. I stopped, pulled out a cigarette, and lit it. Halfway through, a voice came from behind me. Sister Hongxia. I spun around. Zhao Dabiao stood 3 steps back, holding a woven sack, wearing a camo jacket caked in cement dust. He was clearly coming back from work in the next village. His face was covered in gray. Only his eyes were bright. What are you doing here? His voice had that same muffled quality it always did. I hid the cigarette behind my back, trying to keep my voice even. Taking a walk. He looked at me, then looked at the white bulb glowing in the distance, then dropped his head and shifted the sack to his other hand. Sister Hongxia, he said. Zhou Hardware is no good. His wife isn't either. My heart skipped. What did you say? My voice went tight. He didn't repeat himself. He walked past me carrying his sack, took 2 steps, then stopped with his back to me. His voice was so low it sounded like it came from underground. If you need money, come to me. Don't go to him. He said it and walked away, limping, disappearing into the dark. I stood frozen. The cigarette had burned down to my fingers. The sting jolted me awake. I flung the butt to the ground and stared in the direction he'd vanished. My mind was a mess. What did Zhao Dabiao know? How did he know about Zhou Hardware? Did he see something or hear something? What did he mean by no good? The question spun around my head without answers. My phone buzzed. Zhou Hardware. Sister Hongxia, are you here? I'm waiting at the gate. I looked up. Under that white bulb, Zhou Hardware's silhouette stood by the iron gate, waving at me. I took a deep breath, stuffed the phone in my pocket, and walked toward the light. When I reached the gate, Zhou Hardware's smile was brighter than the bulb above him. He was wearing a dark red polo today, collar still popped, gold chain flashing under the light. He held a cup of tea in one hand, the other behind his back, like a gentleman welcoming an honored guest. Sister Hongxia, feeling better, his voice was tuned to exactly the right pitch of concern. I'm fine. I stood at the gate without stepping in. He moved aside and gestured me forward.
Come in.
Tea's ready. New Longjing, I bought this year. Have a taste. I stepped into the yard. Tonight it was different from last time. The osmanthus fragrance was still there, but something new had been added. A dog. A yellow mutt, tied to the osmanthus tree. It stood and barked twice when I walked in. Zhou Hardware snapped at it, and it went quiet. Don't worry, it doesn't bite, he said. I wasn't afraid of the dog. I was afraid of the things inside that house I couldn't see. The front room lights were all on, bright as daytime. Tea set on the coffee table, water already boiled, bubbling away. He sat down and started the tea ritual, even smoother than last time. Rinse, steep, strain. Flowing like water. I didn't sit. I stood by the coffee table and set it straight. 2 rounds. Then I leave. He looked up and smiled. What's the rush? Have some tea first. No. Then at least sit for a minute. He patted the sofa beside him. Sister Hongxia, you standing there like that makes me nervous. I didn't sit. I pulled out a cigarette, lit it, and stood by the window smoking. Outside in the yard, the yellow dog lay with its chin on its paws, eyes half closed, dozing. Zhou Hardware drank 2 cups of tea by himself, then stood and walked over to me. He didn't touch me, just stood beside me, lit his own cigarette. 2 people side by side at the window like ordinary friends. Sister Hongxia, he blew out smoke. Do you know why I came to you? Because I owe you money. Not entirely. He turned to look at me. His eyes behind the glasses looked deep in the lamplight. I'm not short on cash. That hardware store in town nets me over 100,000 a year. I didn't come after you to save a few hundred. I said nothing. I came to you because you're interesting, he said. Village women, they're either gossips like Zhang Tsuehua or mutes like my Shilon. You're different. There's a fight in you. You lose money and you want it back. Can't win it back. You accept the loss. Accept the loss, you pay the debt. And you pay it clean. I stubbed out my cigarette on the windowsill, voice cold as winter wind. Stop wasting my time with this nonsense. 2 rounds, then I'm gone. If you don't want to do it, I'm leaving now. I'll pay you back slowly. He smiled gently. We'll do it. Of course we will. But not tonight. My head snapped toward him. What do you mean? What I mean is, he said slow and easy, tonight I didn't call you here to collect on the debt. I called you to talk about something. My heart started sinking. He walked back to the coffee table, pulled an envelope from the drawer, and held it out. I didn't take it. He set it on the table and weighed down one corner with a teacup. Open it, he said. I hesitated, then picked it up. The envelope wasn't sealed. Inside were a few sheets of paper. I pulled them out, and my hands started shaking. Photographs. Clear photographs. Taken at night, but the angle caught every face perfectly. The first one. Me walking out of Wang Laosan's house. Clothes messy, hair loose. Anyone could tell what had just happened. The second. Me in the alley. Pinned against the wall by Zhao Dabiao. His face was blurry, but mine was crystal clear. The third. Me leaving Li the cripple's house, a half-smoked cigarette still in my hand. 5 photos total. Each one with a different man. Each one enough to make Liu Pingkui collapse on the spot. My hands shook so badly, I couldn't hold them. The photos slipped through my fingers and floated to the floor. You took these? My voice was so hoarse it barely came out. Not me. He sipped his tea. A friend. He runs a photo studio in town and does some side work. He spent a month getting these. I squatted down and picked the photos up one by one, gripping them so tight they crumpled into a ball. What do you want? Nothing much. He set down his cup, fingers laced over his belly. Sister Hongxia, think about what happens if these photos end up in Liu Pingkui's hands. I closed my eyes. I couldn't think about it. If you do as I say, his voice was level, like he was negotiating a business deal. These photos will never reach Liu Pingkui. If you don't cooperate, then I can't help it. I'm a soft-hearted man, but my friend isn't. He took these photos. He needs to get paid for them somehow. I opened my eyes and looked at him. That same warm smile on his face. Behind the gold-rimmed glasses, no malice in his eyes. Maybe even a hint of sympathy. But that sympathy was more disgusting than cruelty. What do you want me to do? My voice had gone completely flat. He stood up, walked over, pulled the crumpled photos from my hands, straightened them one by one, slid them back into the envelope, and put it back in the drawer. No rush, he said. Go home. Think it over. When you've decided, I'll tell you. I've already decided, I said. Tell me now. He looked at me. Quiet for a few seconds. Then he said something that turned my whole body to ice. I want you to recruit for me. I thought I'd misheard. What? Recruit? He repeated it, tone as casual as commenting on the weather. There's a bathhouse in town. A friend of mine runs it. They offer certain special services. Business has been slow lately. They're short on staff. You know a lot of people. Help me introduce a few women. For everyone you bring in, you get a cut. I stared at him like he was insane. Relax. He patted my shoulder. I'm not asking you to go yourself. Just introductions. You know plenty of women from the mahjong tables. Bring one or two. Once it's done, your debt is wiped clean and I'll burn these photos right in front of you. My mind raced. Introducing other women to sell themselves. This wasn't a gambling debt. This wasn't trading my body to settle a tab. This was pimping. Dragging other women down into the mud.
I won't do it, I said.
His smile finally disappeared. He took off his glasses and wiped the lenses with his shirt, then put them back on. Without the glasses, his eyes were exposed, small, yellowish, whites full of red veins, like two overboiled quail eggs. Sister Hongxia. The smile came back once the glasses were on, but it tasted completely different now. You won't do it? That's fine. Then we go back to the original plan. 2 rounds. Tonight. Debt cleared. But those photos, I can't promise my friend won't accidentally send them to Liu Pingkui's phone. I bit my lip until I tasted blood. Give me 3 days, I said. 1 day. He held up a finger. Tomorrow night, same time, you give me your answer. If you agree, we'll talk properly. If you don't, we do the 2 rounds tonight, debt cleared, but the photos are out of my hands. I turned and walked out. At the door, he called after me. Sister Hongxia, it's dark. Walk carefully. Want me to drive you? I didn't answer. I yanked the iron gate open and ran. Night wind hit my face, and I shivered. I hurried out of Qingxi village and onto the dirt road. The moon was out now, lighting up every pothole in the ground like little open mouths. I walked fast, almost running. I was afraid to slow down. If I slowed down, I'd stop. If I stopped, I'd squat by the road and cry. If I cried, someone would see. If someone saw, it would reach Zhang Tsuehua. If it reached Zhang Tsuehua, the whole village would know. I couldn't cry. I half ran all the way back to Liu Family Hollow. At my front gate, the door was still cracked open. I pushed through, tiptoed into the bedroom. Liu Pingkui was still lying face to the wall, breathing softly, asleep. I stood by the bed for a moment, then went to the kitchen. I turned on the light and took a bottle of baijiu from the cabinet. Liu Pingkui had brought it home last time, a bottle of erguotu, half gone. I unscrewed the cap and took a big gulp straight from the bottle. The liquor cut like a knife from my throat to my stomach. I took another. 2 swallows and my body warmed up, but my mind got worse. I leaned against the kitchen wall and slid down to the floor, clutching that half-empty bottle. I thought about what Zhao Dabiao had said. If you need money, come to me. Don't go to him. Go to Zhao Dabiao? What could he give me? He was a limping laborer who built houses for other people, making 80 yuan a day. Could he handle Zhou hardware? Could he get those photos back?
No.
I thought about Zhang Xiulan, the woman tied to the bed, her fingers laced through mine. She was Zhou Hardware's wife. Was she his accomplice or his victim? Was that rough, warm hand comforting me, or was it holding me still for him? I couldn't figure it out. I took another drink. When the bottle was empty, I set it on the floor and hugged my knees, burying my face. The kitchen window wasn't shut tight. Night wind crept through the gap, stirring the ash on the stove top into little drifting clouds. I could smell coal dust, cooking grease, and liquor all mixed together. That was my smell. That was the smell of my life. I remembered years ago, when I was still a young girl. Whenever the village women talked about some woman who'd been loose, I'd curl my lip right along with them. Back then, I thought those women were shameless.
Cheap.
They deserved to be looked down on. Now I was that woman. But I didn't feel shameless.
Didn't feel cheap.
I just felt tired. So tired I didn't want to fight anymore. So tired I wanted to lean on somebody, anybody, even if that somebody was Zhou Hardware. But I couldn't lean on Zhou Hardware. He wasn't a support. He was a trap. Step by step he dug his pit. Step by step he'd led me in. From the 13 orphans' hand at the mahjong table, to the disc, to the photos, to recruiting. What was the next step? I didn't dare think about it. I sat on the kitchen floor for a long time, until the alcohol hit and my head started spinning. I grabbed the wall and pulled myself up, went to the sink, turned on the faucet and splashed cold water on my face. The woman in the mirror was flushed red, eyes bloodshot, dried blood on her lips. I stared at her and heard Liu Pingkui's words from that afternoon. Play less. Save money. My medicine. Can't be stopped. Medicine can't be stopped. Money's running out. Zhou Hardware has money. I stared at the woman in the mirror, and a thought crept into my head. It was a small thought like a seed. But I knew that once I planted it, it would take root and grow into a tree I could never cut down. I turned off the faucet, dried my face, and walked out of the kitchen. Passing through the front room, I checked the clock on the wall.
11 o'clock.
I'd been at Zhou Hardware's for less than an hour, but it felt like a lifetime. I went to the bedroom, undressed, and lay down beside Liu Pingkui. He didn't roll over.
Didn't speak.
His breathing was still so faint that sometimes I had to lean close just to make sure he was alive. I stared at the ceiling with my eyes wide open. The crack was still there, longer than before, stretching from one end to the other, like a black snake. I watched that crack until dawn. When light finally came, my eyelids gave out. I didn't know when I fell asleep. I only knew that Liu Pingkui's coughing woke me, and by then the sun had reached the foot of the bed. He was bent over the edge, coughing so hard his face turned crimson, like he was trying to hack up his insides. I got up, poured him water, patted his back, and waited for the fit to pass. Let's go to town today for medicine, he said after a sip, his voice like a broken bellows. Almost out, I made a sound and went to cook porridge. When it was ready, I filled 2 bowls and carried them to the front room. He'd managed to sit up. He drank slowly, 1 sip, then rest, 1 sip, then rest. I sat across from him, spooning porridge into my mouth, but my head was full of what Zhou Hardware had said last night. One day, by tonight, I had to give him an answer. Hongxia, Liu Pingkui suddenly called my name. I looked up. Is something on your mind? He watched me, a thread of worry in those cloudy eyes. You haven't been yourself these past few days. I put my bowl down and shook my head. It's nothing. Just haven't been sleeping well. He didn't push. He lowered his head, finished his porridge, pushed the bowl aside, and pulled a plastic bag from under his pillow. Inside was some loose cash. He counted it out and handed me 200 yuan bills. For the medicine, he said. I took the money. When my fingers touched his palm, I felt how rough it was, like a dull blade. His knuckles were bent, unable to straighten. Something pinched my heart, but it let go quickly. Over the years, I'd been pinched too many times. My heart had grown calluses. I'm going to town. I pocketed the money and stood up. I changed clothes. At the door, I paused for a moment. The sun was bright, the yard gleaming. The shadow of the crooked jujube tree lay on the ground like a puddle of dried ink. I took a deep breath and walked toward the village entrance. A minivan to town was parked at the village entrance. 1 trip a day, 5 yuan per person. When I climbed in, 3 people were already on board. Zhang Suihua and 2 old women I didn't know. Zhang Suihua spotted me and her eyes lit up like a fly catching the smell of meat. Hongxia, heading to town. She scooted over to make room. I sat beside her without a word. What are you buying? Picking up medicine. Pingkui's medicine, I grunted. She let out a sigh, long and loud, performed for the whole van to hear. Pingkui really has had it rough. So young and already this sick. Hongxia, you take good care of him. He's your man, after all. I turned and stared out the window. Said nothing. The van bounced along the rutted road. Outside, the fields were brown and dead. Corn stalks lay scattered across the ground like a battlefield after the fight was over. In the distance, a few new houses stood out. White walls, red roofs, blazing in the sun. In town, I went straight to the clinic. Dr. Zhou was still there, same thick glasses, same unhurried way of talking. He wrote a prescription for half a month's worth of medicine. I paid and walked out carrying a big bag of herbs. I didn't go home right away. I walked around town, found the main street, and located the bathhouse Zhou Hardware had mentioned. It wasn't a big place, wedged between a general store and a barber shop. The sign read, Clear Spring Bath House, in yellow letters on a red background, most of the paint peeled off.
The door was closed.
A piece of paper on the glass listed hours, 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. I stood outside for a while. Couldn't see anything through the frosted film on the windows. I turned and left. By the time I got back to the village, it was past 1 in the afternoon. I put the medicine away and brewed a bowl for Liu Pingkui. He drank it and lay back down. Lately, he slept more and more, sometimes the whole afternoon. Impossible to wake. I sat in the front room. My phone buzzed several times. Li the cripple, Hongxia, playing this afternoon? Need a fourth. Wang Laosan, Hongxia, my place today. Coming? I didn't reply to any of them. I set the phone on the table and stared at the screen. Then I picked it up, scrolled through my contacts, and found a name, Zhou Hardware. I didn't call, didn't message. I just looked at those 3 characters, like staring into an abyss. A little after 3, the yard gate suddenly swung open. I looked up. Zhao Dabiao stood in the doorway. He wasn't wearing his cement-covered camo today. He had on a clean blue work jacket, and his hair had been washed, still damp, pressed flat against a scalp. He was carrying a plastic bag with 2 apples and a bunch of bananas inside. I came to see Brother Pingkui, he said in that muffled voice. I blinked, then stood and took the bag from him. As he passed me, his eyes paused on my face for just a second. He said nothing and walked straight into the bedroom. I stood in the front room listening. He was talking to Liu Pingkui in the bedroom. His voice was too low to make out the words, but I heard Liu Pingkui laugh twice. That laugh was so faint, like wind brushing dead leaves. But I hadn't heard Liu Pingkui laugh in a very long time. After a while, Zhao Dabiao came back out and stood in front of me. Brother Pingkui's lost a lot of weight, he said. I lowered my head and looked at my feet. Sister Hongxia, his voice dropped even further. What I said to you last night, did you remember it? I looked up at him. His eyes were very dark, very deep, like 2 bottomless wells. No expression on his face, but I could read something in those eyes. Not sympathy, not pity, something I couldn't put a name to. I remember, I said. He nodded, turned, and walked toward the door. At the threshold, he stopped without looking back. Sister Hongxia, if you're really in trouble, come find me. I may be lame in one leg, but when I give my word, I keep it. Then he was gone. I stood in the front room, still holding the plastic bag of fruit. I looked down. Red Fuji apples, big ones. Imported bananas, each one perfectly yellow, without a single dark spot. These weren't cheap. Zhao Dabiao made 80 yuan a day hauling bricks and mixing cement. This bag of fruit cost him at least 30. I set the fruit on the table, sat down, and lit a cigarette.
It got dark again.
I cooked dinner and ate with Liu Pingkui. He seemed a little stronger today, finished most of a bowl of rice and drank a bowl of soup. After the meal, I washed the dishes, brewed tomorrow's medicine, and when everything was done, I stood in the yard looking at the jujube tree. The moon wasn't up yet. A few stars were scattered across the sky, thin and sparse, like grains of rice tossed onto black velvet. My phone buzzed. Zhou Hardware. Sister Hongxia, have you decided? I stared at the message, my finger hovering over the screen for a long time. I thought about Zhao Dabiao's words. Liu Pingkui's medicine. Those 5 photographs. Zhang Xilan tied to the headboard. The closed door of that bathhouse. That afternoon in town, I'd passed a clothing store and noticed a red padded jacket in the window. It was beautiful. White fur trim around the collar. Price tag, $399. I'd stood there staring for a while, realizing I hadn't bought new clothes in 3 years. Last time Liu Pingkui came back from the construction site, He brought me a floral blouse from a street stall. 15 yuan. I thought it looked cheap. The last time I'd actually worn something new was 3 years ago. I'd won over 800 at the mahjong table and went to town on a high, spent 200 and change on an outfit. That night, I wore the new clothes to Wang Laosan's place. He said I looked nice. It made me feel good. Then I lost money that night, paid with my body, and Wang Laosan ripped a button off my new blouse. I closed my eyes. When I opened them, my finger pressed down. I've decided. Zhou Hardware replied instantly. Come to my place. Now, I pocketed the phone and went inside. Liu Pingkui was already lying down, facing the wall as always, breathing soft. I stood beside the bed, looking at his thin back. In the dim light, it looked like a piece of dead wood. Pingkui, I called. No response. He seemed to be asleep already. I stood there a moment longer, then turned and walked out.